Selzer. Is there a T in your last name?
There is. No, it's just Selzer.
It's Selzer. It's not Seltzer.
It's a German name. It means salter of meats. It means people who used to see. They didn't used to have refrigerators, so they used to They used to spice meats to keep them from tasting really bad as they would rot. And this used to be a profession, salter of meat.
Is your family from Germany?
My dad's side is from Germany, and my mom's Irish. So I'm half Irish and half German.
Do you still have family that live over there, or is this just like a few generations ago?
My family was really messed up. Typical comedian, I guess. At a certain point, I decided that I didn't want to watch my mom and dad drink themselves to death.
Yeah.
So I decided that I'm just going to skip that and kind of stopped talking and communicating to them. And
really?
Yeah. It was.
So you hadn't talked to them. Folks still around?
No, they both died. They both drank themselves to death.
Yeah. So when did you make that conscious split to where you were like, okay, I'm gonna go?
About when I was 15, I realized that I wanted to die. That's the only thing I really knew, is that I wanted to die, and I started trying to kill myself.
Yeah.
And I didn't succeed.
You're saying that while you're smiling. It's not a funny thing at all, but it's throwing me off because you're smiling while you're saying it, which is why it's bothering me.
I did. I tried to kill myself, and then luckily I didn't succeed. I tried in a motorcycle. I tried various ways.
Toynal. Oh, Toynal just came in. Hello, Toynal. What's up, Toynal? Toynal, like tunnel, but Toynal.
Toynal. Hi, Toynal.
Yeah, anyways.
Then I decided, around in my 20s, I decided, you know what? If my parents taught me this. My parents didn't give me any reasons to live. They failed as parents. They failed as human beings. So let's forget about them and go find some reasons to live. And I did, so I'm here now.
You were a punk rock kid for a while,
yes,
too, right?
I lived and breathed punk rock most of my life.
Comedians and like punk rock, maybe even punk rock, like kids who get really deep in the punk scene, like usually come from like a messed up background.
I have like 30,000 punk rock records.
That's insane.
That I retired off of. I retired on my punk rock record collection because I would hoard them when people who didn't want them they'd be in the dollar bins, and I would just go in there and just continually hoard as many of them as I could.
Dude, that is so crazy.
35,000 punk rock records.
35,000? Okay, so let me ask you this. Did you listen to them regular? Because, okay.
Do
you see my DVDs, like, right there by you?
Right.
Like, that's not a lot, right? It's a lot, but it's not a lot. It's maybe like 100. Right?
Yeah.
So I can't even count. Like like how many of those I watched last year was maybe like 5, just because I don't have that much time. But I am an avid music fan. But you can listen to that in the car. Did you, when you were home, did you just pull out a record?
Yeah.
And listen to it? Were you like John Cusack in High Fidelity?
Yeah. that's and then I opened a record store, and that is a very accurate portrayal of what it's
you
like
opened
to
a record
run
store.
a record store, and I ran a record store in San Francisco. So if you see that...
For how long?
Oh, for years.
For years. And when did you do that?
I don't know how... time is nothing to me. I just have no idea. I guess it was 10, 15 years ago. I moved to L.A. I met my second wife. My first wife died of cancer.
Oh, I'm sorry.
I moved to San Francisco. I met my second wife in a combination laundromat and coffee shop.
A combination...
Where you did your laundry, and then you had coffee, like you could get stuff. And I said to her, "Are those noodles?" That's what I said to her. And then she ended up being my second wife. And then she eventually she had some kind of undiagnosed diabetes, which gave her brain seizures. And then she became psychotic, and I had to get a restraining order.
Did you know what was happening, or were you just like...
We didn't. The dog kept talking to the doctors. I would talk to the doctors on the phone and say this and this and that. Eventually, they told me that she had some kind of diabetes. But by then, I had to get a restraining order, and she ended up in a mental hospital for a while. And she tried to run me over with a car that I bought her.
And you just thought that she was like, you're like, man, why is she being...
I knew there was a problem because she had multiple personalities, but she was aware of them. She had baby Rita, she had normal Rita, and she had evil Rita. And at one point, her psychiatrist gave her these pills that were supposed to merge your personalities together.
Did it work?
And yes, but she was evil Rita all the time. And evil Rita was just a sociopathic, crazy, manipulating, evil person that wanted me to die. And she tried to run me over.
Sounds
with
like
a
a
car.
horror movie, like that would be from the 80s.
I should probably
VHS
write
section
it.
of Video Store, Evil Rita.
I have many screenplays I need to write about my various wives and
That
girlfriends.
is so crazy. And so she went by. This was in San Fran.
Well, I met her in San Francisco. We moved to Los Angeles.
Okay.
And she was when I met her, she was a kind of overweight girl with zits.
Mm-hmm.
And but we were made for each other in a sense. And so I put her on an exercise program. And then I got rid of her zits on her face. And then then she wanted to be a stripper because she was obsessed with strippers. She was bisexual because most of the girls I go out with are bisexual because I was raised by a bisexual woman. So I'm like,
do you seek that out, or do you just find that it finds you?
They find me. If she likes me, she's bisexual.
Isn't it weird how
not always, but most of the time,
our first view of like a woman or a man is our mother or father or lack thereof, and so subconsciously we seek that out in a mate. I think there's ways to change that, but it has to be like a conscious restructuring.
I have treatment for it that I'm in, and there's things that you can go to. There's something called Al-Anon that I go to, which is good. So if you had alcoholic parents, go to Al-Anon.
I've heard of Al-Anon. I've gone to Coda before.
Coda is very good as well.
I've gone to Celebrate Recovery too.
Adult Children of Alcoholics, something like that.
Go
there and get help, and it'll help you out a lot. But it's still, I go for women that I'm attracted to, but the ones that respond are usually other adult children of alcoholics themselves, or some kind of addict, and they're usually bisexual. Usually are, because I'm emotionally, I'm set up. My mother set me up to be a companion for her, which was a bisexual woman or a gay woman that just got married because she thought she's supposed to do that and have kids and get married to a man. But it was really confusing for me at first because one of my first girlfriends left me for another woman. I was like, what is this? What's going on? Did I turn her into a lesbian? What's happening?
Right.
And then eventually I figured out, my mother had this girlfriend that lived up the street.
Yeah.
And it was... I knew that later on I figured this stuff out, but now I didn't know. But so anyway, I eventually decided not to kill myself, and then I found some reasons to live, and then I went to, I just got rid of my parents, got them out of my life completely. This is a negative influence on me, and they're going to drink themselves to death. So do I need to watch that? Is it going to add to my life?
So you left when you were 15?
Dad. No, I left when I was 17.
17, and you ran away from home,
Pretty
essentially?
much.
Did you finish high school?
I did finish high school. I was living in an apartment outside of my house, and I finished high school.
You were supporting yourself?
Yeah. And then finished high school, and then I got, eventually into my 20s, I went to art school. I got a bachelor's degree in fine art, and then I was in the master's program at the California Institute of the Arts, and I used to do visual art. I used to do paintings, and I still have paintings in museums and galleries throughout the United States, but my art that I do now is what I call performance art, but no one understands what that is, so I just call it comedy.
Right.
So that's what I do now as an artist, is the performances.
You have gone more in a conventional stand-up route though recently. I remember when you first started showing up, you were I remember seeing you at open mics, and you would play on your phone and you would sing like a
songs.
A country singer.
Yeah,
but
I still do.
I got it. I thought it was funny because you were pushing people's buttons, but there were like comics even who didn't get it at the time. I'm like, you're a comic. You're supposed to understand what he's doing. But like, I think now like your joke writing's funny. You know, like you have like funny. You have classically funny bits, but like when you first started coming around, I remember it was like this obscure kind of like
it was more just straight performance art. But my goal as a performance artist was to take on as much of the stagecraft and skills of a comedian, so that over time I will look and sound more and more just like a comedian. So that's what I'm doing now. I'm continuing to take on more and more of the skills and of the comedian and the stage presence, the stagecraft. I go to the Comedy Store and I study the other the comics, and I study comics on, videos of them every day. And, that performance art and comedy are, kind of overlap. But, just extreme, like, performance art that comes just from the art world can be anything. Like the most famous performance artist was probably Chris Burden, who's most famous for having himself shot. In art
real
gallery.
Life?
Yes. So in an art gallery, had himself shot. And that changed the art world completely because it really questioned.
He was obviously really depressed.
No, he was just he was a guy. He was a conceptual artist, and he had a
like,
friend who was an expert marksman. Shoot him through the arm. He had big arms.
Oh, so he didn't like kill himself?
No, he had himself shot just through the arm, and he took him to the hospital. And the media covered it a lot. You could look this guy up. He's very, very interesting. In fact, have you seen the?
Did he go to jail for it?
No. This was done inside of an art gallery. It was hard work.
They had made an agreement and everything. It wasn't like a surprising thing. Like, all right, you're gonna go over there, hide behind a hill.
It was,
and then it's like, just shoot me. And then it's like, what are you doing? It's like, all right, I'm an artist.
Who's an expert marksman in the military, who got out of the military. You can see the videotape of it on, not videotape, it's a 8mm film. And you can see it on YouTube if you want. You've seen
how did you find out about this stuff? Because performance art is not a mainstream thing. Like when someone says performance art, I can't think of one performance artist. The closest I could think to it is Andy Kaufman, or
Andy Kaufman, yes, was another performance artist.
Who was the most popular one? Why am I drawing a blank? I read his
Karen
book.
Finley
with the pop art. Andy Warhol,
Andy Warhol wasn't really a performance artist, but there were elements of performance in what he did. You can see his entire persona as a work of performance art. But I learned about this stuff because I was in art school. I have a bachelor's degree in fine art. You study art, philosophy, art history of everything, and as it pertains to art. So I have an academic degree in art. So you study Chris Burden. He's one of the most relevant artists. Have you seen the piece? It's called, I think it's called City Lights. I think it's called. I'm probably wrong. But it's the rows of lampposts in a row down at Mocha that's in all the movies, and everyone sees it. You've never seen that?
Oh, yeah, the lampposts. Yes. I know exactly what you're talking about.
That's Chris Burden as well.
Really?
He's a giant in contemporary art. If anyone out there, take the time and look him up. He's just an incredible artist.
Is he still alive?
He passed away, unfortunately, and he... I met him once. That's kind of like meeting Picasso. It's like meeting the Picasso of your time. I met him once. I spoke to him very briefly, but it's a cherished memory. And he is an amazing conceptualist. There's that artwork kind of changed the art world, because it was like, okay, let's say you're a landscape painter. You're making a little landscape, with nice colors, and it's going to end up on a bank wall or some rich person's wall. And then someone comes over to your studio, or you read something in an art magazine or a newspaper that says you're an artist that had himself shot. When you stop, you turn back to your painting's going to seem kind of trivial compared to the guy who actually risked his life and limb. So it challenged, what are we as artists? What are we doing? Are we just here to make decorative objects for banks and corporate offices and rich people's walls and museums and galleries? Are we here to change things? Are we here to change the world? Are we here to change our change people's perception of art, move art along forward? Are we here to personally risk ourselves, take some kind of risk? Are we just here to be people that push paint around or push clay around and make decorations? Are we decorators, or are we thinkers that are going to challenge the way everyone thinks the entire world? In a way like Picasso did, and like many of and Salvador Dali did, and many of the revolutionary artists out there. Are we still revolutionary? Are we still relevant? And that was one of the most relevant artworks. That was 1971. There was another piece of art that century. I believe it was 1009. The year 1909, when a guy named Malevich from Russia painted a black square on a white background, and he said, "This is the last painting." He said, "Everything in art has been done. Now I've done this. Now you can stop." And then he stopped painting for a while, and then slowly, as people heard about it, you had people actually.
Was it good?
It was amazing. You could look it up. It's one of the most important artworks done. I think that and to Chris Burden, piece where he had himself shot, are the two most important artworks of that century, because they changed everything about art. Let's say, again, you're a landscape painter, you're painting a landscape, and someone comes over to your studio, because that's how you heard about it then, by a letter or an art magazine or an art journal. Someone comes over to your studio and says, "There's a guy in Russia who painted a black square on a white surface, and he says, this is the last painting. Everything's been done, and now you can stop. Everyone can stop painting. Everything's been done." And you're going to stop just for a moment to contemplate that. And when you turn back to your painting, again, the painting's different. All art is different after that point, because the idea, everything's been done. And a lot of people all over the world stop painting, if just for a second, if just for a minute, if just for a week, if just for a year. And people did stop painting all over the world, and the artist himself stopped painting for a while. And then he started painting again. But you had to, the entire art world had to deal with this idea that everything's been done.
Do you think it was because it was something that was different, and it's like, and who do you look up to more? Like, do you look up, now that you do comedy, do you still want to follow in these footsteps of these great artists that you originally idolized, or is it now I want to be like this stand-up or that stand-up?
Being still a fine artist, I would love to, what I'm doing, I would like that to be recognized by the art world as art. And, I used to have my paintings and my shows were written about in Art Week and Art in America and things like that. And I would like to, again, have that happen, because I'm still an artist, but I'm taking on the accoutrements of a stand-up. I'm a performance artist. And I did performance art throughout my career, on and off. In fact, I did performance art before I even knew what it was. When I was in high school, I ran for Pope. When the Pope died, I ran for Pope.
You were just trying to be funny, though, right?
It was performance art before I knew.
It was
really,
performance art, but you did it to be funny, to get a laugh,
I did it to be funny, too, but there was an idea behind it. I was lampooning the idea that who is a holy man, and how is that person selected, and what qualifies you to be a holy man, or the person closest to God. Why not me? Okay? So, and I had some cards printed up that said Mark Selzer for Pope, and I handed them out, told people why I would be a good Pope. And there was a teacher that didn't know I was joking. He said, "Well, Mark, I'm sure you'd make a good Pope, but I don't think you're going to win." Like he was letting me down. He was trying to talk sense back into you. Right, talk to sense. He really thought I was seriously thinking I was going to become Pope. And he didn't understand that it was a joke or a piece of conceptual art before I really had the dialogue to talk about it. But there were ideas there, and you qualified as conceptual art. There are artists that have very sophisticated ideas, but they cannot talk about them in terms that are given to you by the art world in order to talk about such things. They can't explain it, but the work they're doing can be very sophisticated. But they're
the suspenseful music comes on.
But they're dealing with ideas that are very sophisticated, but they're showing them to you in their art, but they may not be able to explain them. You know, it's like a lot of the people that play jazz and innovated music. Could they explain it to you in art, the language of the music school? Probably not. Somebody else had to listen to it and go, oh, this is how this is conceptually different than all of this music that came before. The same way you look at a Jackson Pollock painting or a Malevich or a work by Chris Burden, and you say, this is how conceptually how this is different from all the artworks that have come before. No one's ever done this before. So this is actually something new. So when Wasley Kandinsky is credited with the first non-representative painting, the first painting that is completely abstract, that references only itself. I believe that is that 1909? I think so. Maybe it's 1913. I'm forgetting my art history.
Yeah, I mean, it's a lot to remember, man. It's
wonderful to study, and I encourage everyone to get out there and look up Chris Burden and look up Malevich.
I'm definitely going to look up the Chris Burden dude.
Oh, he's amazing.
Yeah, I don't know much about him. It's like, it's weird. Like, I know a lot about, if you want to be, like, technical and paint, like, a broad brush stroke. I know a lot about art in terms of, like, movies. You know, I'm a big movie buff.
Right.
You know, directors, like a lot of like useless, like nerdy knowledge, you know. But I don't know a lot whenever it comes to like paintings or like famous painters or performance artists. Like I couldn't even, like I said, I didn't know who Chris Burton was, you know. So to me, it's like the art that I always referred to, and I never even liked the word art because of connotation behind it. You know what I mean? Like artist, like there became a point when it became, you know, to where like, you know, like it just seemed less sincere and genuine.
Right. Well, that's another thing that Chris Burden did with his piece Shoot in '71, was he took all of that away as well. You know, it's kind of taking art off of its pedestal completely. When you go into an art gallery and have yourself shot with a gun through the arm, that's so different. That takes it's incredibly sophisticated. A lot of people didn't understand the sophistication of it at first.
Yeah,
but through the years, how challenging it was keeps coming to the surface. Yeah,
because he had his own reasons for doing it, you know. And I mean, not to use this as a platform to be like, well, this is what I do, but like, there's this thing that I started doing at open mics a couple years ago. When I find myself caring, and I don't do this at a show, but when I find myself caring too much what comics think of me, I will just go on stage and make noises and force myself to make noises for the full 5 to 7 minutes, because it's a way of reclaiming my power to be like, it's not about the laugh. Or I'll go up there and intentionally try to bomb or try to not be funny, to detach myself. So that way, whenever I am on a show, I will be able to like speak from my heart, be able to like tell the truth. I'm not like looking in your eyes and being like, does he like that? No, okay, I gotta be funny, and I gotta change, and I gotta pander because they don't like that. Because I have a problem with that. Like that's part of being, you know, sort of codependent. You know, you want people to like you a lot, you know. So
that's where the art. See, me speaking as an artist, a person with a degree in fine art from the Otis Art Institute Parsons School of Design and from Cal Arts. That's where the art of stand-up and you looking at you as an artist. Okay. That is taking a stance. I'm an artist, you know. I'm not just a guy that's out here to get yucks, you know, or be cool or be a star or whatever, or get some money, you know. So that is one of the reasons that attracts me to it, is that kind of art element in it. So I love that about it. And, you know, I avoided, at a certain point, I started to avoid the mics with a bunch of comics. At a certain point, I just started to avoid that because I was like, I don't know what I'm learning here. I want to know what a real audience thinks. So I started to find mostly mics where there's artists, poets, musicians, and going there. So maybe I'm the only comic there. And that way I've got a real, genuine audience that probably doesn't want to laugh. So at that point, you know whether or not what you're saying is funny at all. Because in comedy open mics, the comedians will laugh at your jokes if they think you rank higher than them in the comedy world. If they're your friend, You know, I often tell my friends, stop laughing at my jokes at the mics because I want to see if I can make people laugh without them seeding the laughter, you know, which is a wonderful thing for my friends to do. They care about me, and that's great. But I want to go out on my own in front of a bunch of people I don't know who are not comics and see if I can make them laugh. And that's how I learned and am learning a little bit more and a little bit better and being on shows, you know, now and just learning a lot. You know, every time I go up, I just learn so much. I almost want to bomb because, you know, I just want to learn. You know
well,
what I mean?
That's a healthy attitude.
Why did I bomb?
I mean, I don't know, like in a self-sabotage way, but it's a healthy attitude to go up there and be like, like the only time I was talking to a friend about this the other day, like, because I've done comedy for long enough to where the only time I bomb is if I don't want to bomb.
Right.
Or like if I'm, let me rephrase that, like if I'm so obsessed with doing good. I did, like I'll do like a, you know, road gig and don't care and do great, and then but then if I go and do something and I'm like, you know, like very concerned with what the audience thinks, or I want to impress the booker or the person at the club who booked me or these group of comics over here, I won't do well. I don't do well with that mindset. I don't know what it is, but like clockwork, I will not do well. As long as I'm push that out, I do well, you know?
Yeah.
Maybe it's my style, I don't know, but, you know.
Yeah, well, your style is very funny. It's always been very good. I recognize that in you. It's like, there's so many people in doing comedy, you listen to them and go, you should quit, you're terrible. But then again, a lot of those, you know, I see nothing, you know, somebody's seen out, because I've been a fan of comedy my whole life. Just a rabid fan of comedy my whole life, especially Andy Kaufman, but, you know, pretty much all comics. Steve Martin and stuff like that. I used to memorize Steve Martin routines when I was in junior high school.
Dude.
And I just think of him as an artist. He's a guy with a degree in philosophy as well.
Yeah, his stuff is pretty deep, man. Like it's definitely not surfacey. People take it as like pure silliness, but like even his writing and everything, like he's just a guy who likes being weird, and he does it because he's so normal in conversation, but you know he likes to push his limits and his boundaries of like he does it in his own way.
He says, "I started out with no talent," and that's what he says. And when you listen to him, like his persona is his everyday persona, you know, you can really believe it. You know that he didn't that he started out as. But anyway, what I was saying was so many times you see. Comedians, you go, oh, there's something there. Like you know, I saw you and I said, oh, there's something there. You should keep going. But then, you know, there's so many other comics you think they should quit, and I see nothing there. But then suddenly they get good. So I'm completely wrong, you know. Like I think, oh, that guy should quit. In fact, I saw this guy who I won't mention, and he was always terrible. He was a nice guy. I loved him. I love all comics mostly, and he. I just thought, oh, this guy should quit, and I kept leaving the room every time he would perform because he kept performing in some of the same places I was performing.
And it would just and
it was terrible, and I was like, man, you
got
need
up
to
and
quit.
Left the room,
and it was just like, then suddenly one day, he made it funny, and it was the same horrible material that he always been working on. And he made it funny, and he succeeded.
Really quickly.
Oh, boy, I was wrong.
Guest once said, "What do we take you to private for?" I don't know, buddy. I don't know. There's a private option. I mean, if you take Mark and I to private, we're still going to be wearing our clothes.
Yes,
even though we're talking about obscure art, but yeah, for private, like. Are you asking what do you take to like what's the point of it? To private chats, it's different for everybody. Usually they're offering something else, but right now what I'm offering is we're going to be doing the same thing in private, so I don't want you to waste your money, you know, by taking us there. But anyways, this is my buddy Mark Selzer. He is a stand-up comedian in the greater Los Angeles area. I don't know what that means by when people say the greater Los Angeles area. But he's a stand-up comedian in L.A. I want to go back, though, to what you're talking about, though, because it is super interesting. The fact that you retired off of selling punk rock records. Like, did you sell those individually and you just put everything into savings? Or did some guy be like, I want all of them?
I know. I retired because basically I sell them every day online. I've hoarded punk rock records because no one thought they were cool.
You sold all of them?
I have not sold all of them. I still have about 30,000 left. Maybe.
Wait. So you had 30, how many?
Like today, I've sold maybe 100. Every day I sold maybe $100, $200, $800 of punk rock records. Every
off
day.
Off eBay?
Off of various places on the internet. I don't use eBay. And I don't suggest anyone use eBay.
That's interesting because eBay is the go-to thing. What else would you be selling it off of? Amazon? Okay.
And a place called Discogs.com.
Discogs.com. So you sell these and you ship it out and everything like every day?
I ship it out every day. Or I have a personal assistant ship out the records for me to do it for me. I don't. I usually I've had various personal assistants on and off and on and off. Yeah. Usually I have this monster apartment and just say, okay, can I have a place to live, and you do this work. You're doing this amount of work.
Yeah.
And recently I had a comedian doing it, and I won't say who she is or anything like that, but it was just a matter of, I have been making these packages every day. I'm super fast at it. You would not believe how quickly I can make a package for a record and how beautiful it will look, and put the addresses on it and everything I need to put on it and ship it. But the thing is, I get so tired of doing it. So sometimes I'll have an assistant help, and you just have to, it's usually a girl, but you just have to be careful not to make sure that she's in any way compromised or anything like that, and try not to say inappropriate. Being a comedian, don't say inappropriate things.
Yeah. We say inappropriate stuff all the time.
We say inappropriate stuff all the time.
You know what it is, really quickly on that, not just to piggyback on that story. It is so crazy because you forget that how repressed so many people's language is.
Yeah.
Whenever you've been, I started doing comedy, man, a long time ago. And so I've done it long enough, but I forget. I'll put a tweet out that I really don't think is offensive, at all. I really don't think it is, because I'm not a super offensive comic.
Right.
But there's always somebody. There's always somebody that's like, I said this doctor woman has a baby voice, so I don't trust her. I tweeted that, and then some girl goes, "You're very degrading to women," and was like, "You marginalize women," and all this whole thing. And I'm like, you're making this such a non-issue, an issue. But that's what people do, whenever they're not exposed or sheltered or whatever. So it's like, we do have to watch what we say, and it's hard because that's the thing that makes you a great comic, is not watching what you say. But it also is what gets you in trouble, can end your career,
I did have this one personal assistant, and I was very careful always, never to always be respectful, always
nice jugs, babe.
Right, none of that. Always be respectful, and she was beautiful, and she stopped being a personal assistant, and then she was gone for about a year, and then she contacted me again and told me she wanted to have a relationship with me. And she was no longer my, friend who was helping out. I don't call them my employees, but friend who was helping out. So, that was fine. But, I was so careful with her always, when she was living in my apartment, to always make sure I was professional and treat her with the utmost respect, and never was anything sexual or anything like that going on. But I told her that, and she said, "Oh, well, I totally wanted to." You should have. Not when you're there, because I would worry that, you see, if I
get sued.
Did, well, they're not really my employees. They're just my friends that are living with me, and they're helping me in my business, and that's what they are. There's no pay. There's no kind of agreement. But still,
you let them live with you?
But yes, but still.
So free rent, basically.
Basically, yeah. But still, if I was involved with an assistant like that, I would feel like there was somehow that they would feel there was some obligation, or that it was somehow part of their employment.
It does sound like you're...
And I would not want that at all.
Yeah.
That's not what I want, especially as I get older, too. When you're younger, you just don't care. But, as I get older, it's like, no, I want, as I get older, I'm more and more mushy and more relationship-oriented. I was married twice, but I guess I've always been pretty relationship-oriented. But still, as you get older, you're like, well, I don't want that girl to be with me because of this or that or whatever.
Yeah.
I want her to be with me because she likes me.
Because she likes you, yes.
That's what I want to experience already, not somebody being with me because there's an obligation or something like that, and something outside of some kind of emotional attraction or some kind of physical attraction or spiritual attraction or whatever. So, anyway, that's
But you to go back, because I know we kind of went off topic for a second. So I'm so interested in the fact that you retired off of something that you bought. Okay.
Yes.
So you started buying punk rock albums when you were a kid because you love punk.
Punk rock. It was my junior year of my freshman high school.
37,000. I'm trying to think is it everything across the board from like your stuff like the Germs, Minor Threat,
right, the Germs, Minor Threat,
but also
Kennedys,
to stuff like
Crass,
that's more like Sticky Little Fingers,
Stiff Little Fingers,
Stiff Little Fingers. That's what it is.
Stiff Little Fingers. Their first album, they're considered punk rock throughout their whole career, but their first album is really, really hard. It's called Inflammable Material.
Yeah,
it's one of the greatest hard punk records of all time.
So is it all punk, or some of it like subgenres of punk, like Velvet? People put Velvet Underground in the punk category, and I don't see that at all. That's
okay. Well, it's the beginning in the 60s. There were some hard, noisy bands in the 60s then too. There was Iggy and the Stooges. Okay, there was Blue Cheer. There were many, many other bands, especially in the early 70s, and bands that were like punk before there was punk rock, like Death. There was a recent documentary about a band called Death, who was an all-black band that played punk rock in 75 and 76. And basically, if you listen to the first Alice Cooper album, it's basically a punk rock album. There's Kim Fowley, who wasn't really all that noisy. He actually was in some of his songs. And that was in the 60s, but his attitude was very different from the other rock and rollers. And there was also the Dictators. There were lots of bands that were considered proto-punk, and then you got into the punk era, the regular punk era, which started about 75. But I loved punk. So I have some of that, and also the weird experimental bands that were punk, like Throbbing Gristle. Okay, if you ever heard of them.
I don't know them.
And there were tons of obscure garage bands that had kind of a punk antagonism to them and off-kilterness to them, but they were very experimental. And then there was Devo punk, which is like punk rock with like a keyboard. It's very herky-jerky. There's death rock, there's death punk, there's all that stuff, and I love all of it.
Did you even like pop punk? And I'm not talking about I'm not talking about like Screeching Weasel, the Vandals.
That's the Screeching Weasel is a little bit later, although I like him. It's okay. I don't really have my collection went from about mainly 1975 or 76 to about 1985, and that's pretty much what I have, like 35,000 punk rock records.
Yeah,
and also some new wave. Especially the garage wave, the more underground wave, and Devo, and just a lot of those bands, the early Ultravox, stuff like that. I love that stuff. So
you was it conscious, like, I am going to sell these some days, or was it just,
I'll tell you the story how I started my business. I was in a record store called Aaron's All Ears Records. It was on Melrose, and I was broke. I was in art school. I was trying to figure out a way, how can I make some money? What kind of job could I get? So I found this record by the Misfits. At the time, it was worth about $130. It's called Walk Among Us by the Misfits.
Oh, I love that album.
It's
so
an amazing
much.
album, and I found it in the $1 bin. Okay, and then I could find all these records. They were like in the $1 bin. They were $30, $40, $50, $60, and this one was with $130, and I didn't have an extra dollar, so I went out and I bummed change in front of the store. I hid it in the opera section. Then I went out and I bummed $1 fairly quickly, because then I had like a big mohawk and all the spikes and leather and all this stuff. And I looked like a very strange punk rocker. And the people were so happy I wasn't going to eat their children that they just gave me money right away. Yeah. And so I went in and got my $1.08, which was the tax, $0.08, bought the record. I put it in an ad in the back of Flipside or Maximum Rock and Roll, which cost $2, and I sold it for $130. And I used $30 for food, and I used $100 to go and buy 100 other $1 albums. $1 records that I knew I could sell for 30, 40, 50, 60, 70, 80, $100 out of the $1 bins.
How'd you find out what they were worth?
I just knew because I was constantly looking at punk rock records, constantly looking at their value, constantly looking at where they were being sold and wanted them, and was buying every punk rock record I could get my hands on, multiple copies. And so what I did was I used that to generate money, and then I had a mail order business where I continually put ads in the back of punk magazine. It would say send me $3 or $3 in stamps, or $2 or $2 in stamps for a catalog of punk records, and people would send me the money, $2. I get $2 in the mail. Usually spend it on food, and I would find someone who had a Xerox machine I could use at their work, and Xerox up these punk catalogs, and that was constantly changing and whiting out and putting, pasting over them and stuff like that, and to get rid of the records I didn't have, to add the other ones. And I was selling records. I started a mail order business of just of punk rock records, and in doing that, I also learned about how much they're worth. I sold that record for $30, and I'll put the next one on for $50 or $60, see if I can sell it. And I would also go into stores and see what they were selling for on the walls, because a lot of them, and again, people didn't know at the time, so I was hoarding them.
It seems like it would be harder to do that now. Like if you saw a Misfits walk among, you see that right there? Those are all left over. Like the Simon and Garfunkel parents had it. Right. Charlie Pride found that in a bin. Waylon found it in a bin. Tom Petty bin. Right. Bob Seger Silver. Like a History of Otis Redding. I think I bought that in an actual record store.
Right.
But with that being said, the Otis Redding one was probably like $10, maybe 11. The rest, that one was my parents. The ones in between were just 25 cents, something like that.
It's harder now.
$1.
People are wiser. But then, you had these people that just...
The internet wasn't out.
The internet wasn't out, and people were just like, punk sucks. What is this? All these European punk records were just sitting around, and even Japanese punk records were just sitting around, and you could just go and buy them for nothing. I just used to take every punk rock record in their place, put it on the counter, and say, I'll give you this much money for it, and they'd just be happy to get rid of it, because no one knew what it is.
So, but you would put this in the paper?
I would put it, I would put it in my magazine that I would sell. The catalog of punk records that I would.
Did you sell it hand to hand?
And then the internet came, and then I started, I also did record fairs on the weekends, which is hell because you had to carry a bunch of old records into my girlfriend's car.
So
boxes.
And you would sell them out of the car?
Yeah, no, I would sell them at record fairs.
That is such an entrepreneurial, no, seriously,
dude. I opened a store,
because
and then I retired on my punk rock record collection. I retired on my bad tasted music. People were selling me these records because the people who worked in the record stores thought these were shitty records, and were glad that someone wanted to buy them, and for any price. And I knew they were great, and knew they were going to become more valuable, and were becoming more valuable, or were already valuable. So I was buying them. I think your guy's here that wants to repair your home.
Is he? Where?
He was out there. He was taking pictures.
Oh, okay. And we are back. Yeah. Still the same thing, pretty much.
Libertarianism.
Well, I want to hear.
When I died.
Yeah, I want to hear. Yeah, you got so many interesting stories, man. So, right now, I want to go back on that topic though about you selling their records thing, because it's so. It's a fascinating story, because when you think of punk rock, you think of a guy living at the bottom of a basement with water dripping on the side of his face, especially during that era. And he's like, man, it's about the lifestyle. And he's like eating a rat.
It depends. It depends, because the message of punk rock wasn't necessarily that the economy was bad. It was that culturally we are dead. That was the message of punk rock, that rock and roll culture had become stagnant. Our culture had become stagnant. Nothing different is allowed anymore. It used to be, like Devo. Let's take Devo. Devo was at one point considered a punk rock band. Devo used to have to hire bouncers that could fight.
Yeah.
Because people would get so angry that they weren't playing Led Zeppelin that they would actually come up and try to physically harm the members of the band. And they had to hire bouncers that could fight to keep people off.
That
of
probably
them.
made some people start hating Led Zeppelin.
It used to be like there was this band in the 1977, 78 in Los Angeles that had this song called "Kill the Hippies," and it was tongue in cheek, but people in the audience who had long hair would get scared. They're thinking they were serious. And there's a lot of sarcasm and taking the stance of the villain in punk rock. So people didn't really know, what was being said. Were they serious? There was an anti-war song by Fear called "Let's Have a War." We'll sell the rights to the networks. Let's have a war. It's already started in the city. Suburbia would be just as easy.
Punk rock does have a lot of that, like, sarcastic stuff that is saying the opposite of what they mean, like sarcasm,
So people would come to Fear concerts thinking they were a pro-war band, who were pro-war, and people were coming there that understood that it was a song, it was a war protest song.
Yeah.
But, there was all kinds of, in Fear itself, Fear the band, like they used to come out and say, "Spit on me," and everyone would spit on them, and that was called gobbing, is how you applauded a punk band, was to spit on them.
Just spit on them.
And now, that's unthinkable. No one would do it because of AIDS and all the diseases and people are paranoid. But then, people would be drenched in spit if you played in a punk band.
So so you started selling this, though. Did you start making money like right away? Did you see like more and more?
I started making enough money to help me through art school to get by.
So you paid your college through punk rock
I didn't pay my college.
records.
I paid my college by threatening to sue my dad for the money. And so he gave me a certain amount, and I borrowed the money. So I went to art school mostly on Pell Grants and stuff like that, and borrowing from Sally Mae, which I still owe. And I've never been able to pay back. There's no way I'm ever going to be able to pay back.
Oh, wait, your mic is, there we go.
That's a good thing that we didn't have that on the tape. But anyway, I would make a certain amount of money. By doing this, and then I started to do on the weekends they'd have these record fairs and record swap meets, and I would take boxes of records there, sell them, and then I would go through everyone's records, and I would buy all their records that were punk rock that they didn't know were valuable, and then put them in my boxes, and of course jack the price way up. And so because I'd arrive there very early, and I would take all the punk rock out of everyone else's that was basically they didn't know it was valuable. And then if they knew it was valuable, leave it there. At the end I'd go over maybe to their table and say, "Hey, I'll give you $5 each for for each of these punk records," and sometimes they'd sell out. But basically if they didn't know it was valuable, I would take it and jack the price way up. I just kept doing that. So it was enough to pay my rent. I retired not rich. I retired, making, okay, getting by, But it's really all I really want to do. I don't have a desire for a Porsche or a this or that or whatever.
Right. But you still have like a business sense because that is an intuitive business sense that you had. Like I wouldn't have thought to do that.
I stumbled across it. People were always like, "Oh, that's a great record. How much do you sell a record for?" "Oh, I never sell any of my records." And then after a while, I started to see the same record. Some guy had, "Oh, I'll give you $30 for that record." And I was like, "Yeah, I really need the money, but I won't sell it, But then I found another one for $1, and I said, "Here, give me $30," and he did. And I found that people will pay for this stuff, and they still do. So every day, I sell a certain amount. Some days it's just like any business. There's ups and downs. Some days I get a ring on my phone, and I just sold $800 worth of stuff,
Jeez.
Then others days there can be some lean times, and it's up and down. I also have to relist my 35,000 records, which I'm struggling to do constantly because the websites that I used to sell on went under.
So how much maintenance and time do you have to
spend?
spend?
There's a certain amount. If I don't have a personal assistant to do it, and it's hard also to teach someone to list records. It's kind of a skill and an art form. You kind of have to know a lot about the record. Someone could look up a record and go, "This record's worth $15, but it's really worth, $300 because the label's blue instead of green." And there's all of these weird things. So
you have to find a huge music nerd.
Yeah, you can, or you just have to teach them slowly to do it. And then also a lot of the busy work can be done by someone else. But right now I'm doing everything myself. And but I still have, I'm relisting my items. I have maybe 20,000 stuff listed. I sell about 30,000 things that I need to list, hopefully before I die. I want to sell them all before I die. If I sold them all before I die and put their price tag now, it would be like $1 million, okay? But am I going to sell half of those before I die? I don't know. A few 100,000 before I die? I don't know, But I already did die once with my record collection still there, 35,000 records, and probably another 15,000 punk flyers that are valuable, pins and buttons and pieces of memorabilia and punk magazines and fanzines. And but I died recently. I left my apartment
you mentioned that.
knowing that I was dying. I thought,
how long ago was this?
It was about a year ago. And I used to have this thing called my mom called the stomach flu, and I had it once a year. And what it was is because I had 2 alcoholic parents, it caused so much stress that I had hundreds of gallstones inside my gallbladder.
From stress?
From stress. So from living with alcoholic parents. And then living with the problems that causes in your life. So once a year I'd get this thing that I called the stomach flu. I'd just be in my bed going for a few days. Now this time I got it again. You just lie there and it hurts and you throw up, and after a few days it goes away. But this time it didn't go away. And then it got really, really bad. And I said, I know I'm dying. So I signed my will, left my apartment, crawled down to the sidewalk, got an Uber and went to county and screamed for 15 hours at them. They didn't know what was wrong with me, but I had a necrotic gallbladder, which is the same thing.
Were they not wanting to admit you?
They admitted me, but they didn't know what was wrong. I was just screaming, and they kept telling me to shut up, in your death throes over there because, the patients are trying to sleep. And finally, the nurses were threatening to go home because they were annoyed with my screaming. So a doctor finally came in with an ultrasound and looked at me, and he said, "Oh, burst gallbladder," which they said, "Well, that's one of the most painful things you can get and come to the hospital with." So we see why he's screaming for 15 hours. And so they finally gave me some morphine. Why do
some of these doctors suck so bad?
I don't know. And then they finally gave me some morphine, so I stopped screaming. And then they thought it was just a normal gallbladder, but then they got burst gallbladder. When they got in, then they found out it was necrotic. What happens, the organ itself had died, and it was leaking stomach acid into the inside of my body, and that was causing the pain, which is fatal. And by the time they cut me open, I died on the table, and they brought me back. So I woke up.
How long were you?
With 35 staples, barely holding my guts in, and a bunch of tubes coming out of me, and choking on a breathing machine, high on morphine, and I thought I was in hell and was being tortured. Because it was the most horrible torture, because my hands were tied, because they kept trying to rip the breathing machine out. And then eventually I did rip the breathing machine out, because I got him to release one of my hands, motioning I needed to write something. So they gave me a pen and a pencil, and it was just horrible torture to have this breathing machine in your throat. And then I was able to rip my hand free and rip the breathing machine out. It had this big balloon in it. Luckily, I took it out, and I still have my vocal cords, because a lot of people do that, wreck their vocal cords, and they can't speak. So I got it out of there correctly, which was nice. And then I managed to pull myself out of the grave, and was in critical care with less than a 50% chance of living. And I finally made it out of the hospital.
How long were you So how long were you clinically dead for?
I do not know that. I'd have to go get the things. In fact, I'm thinking of suing somebody. I'm thinking of suing county, but I don't know what good it does to sue county. But I need to talk to a lawyer about it. But it's just basically just trying to recover from dying. I'm just starting to exercise again and feel strong again, which is good.
Yeah, and how long were you away?
I was away for, oh God, that was like probably 6 weeks. Probably I was away, but I came back and I wondered too after I died if I was going to continue to do it. But I did. I just decided this is what I want to do till I drop dead. So the going and doing that stuff is what I wanted to do, but I didn't know if I was still going to do it after I died. And then I went back, and there were some complications too, so I ended up in the hospital again. But I had to force them to release me early because I needed to go do my business, or I would be out on the street with 35 staples in my stomach and tubes coming out of me. And I had to do my work, to make sure I have my rent, or I'd be evicted. So, and my 35,000 records. So I hope to sell my 35,000 records before I die again. And I was in the hospital hallucinating.
Did that scare you? Like when they told you that, were you like mortified?
It's scary to die. When they told me that, well, they told me, when they finally figured out they were going to operate on me, and they just thought I had a regular gallbladder. They tried to take it out laparoscopically. Then they found out it was necrotic, and then they had to cut me open for like 1.5 feet, and then they were scooping out dead flesh and a bunch of gallstones, hundreds of gallstones out of the inside of my body, and washing me out and sewing me back together. And I didn't know I didn't know if I was going to ever see the world again, because when I went under, they read to you, you could die, you could die, you could die, you could die, and they make you sign all these consent forms. I said, well, what else can I do? I mean, you have to operate on me. In fact, when I went back in, I was having complications again because there was a gallstone that they'd missed that got into what's called the common bile duct. And eventually that passed, but before it did, it was in horrible pain, throwing up again, and they wouldn't let me eat for like 3 days. And so I had back in the hospital. It was another 2 weeks in or 3 weeks after I'd gone home. I was in there for another week again. And they said that we want to go in with a camera through down your esophagus into your stomach and find the common bile duct and go up in it and make sure that you don't, if there's a gallstone there, we try to grab it and get it out of there, poke it, break it up. And to make sure, because that could kill you, right? So I'm like, I was feeling better. So I'm like, but people die when you do that, don't they? They said, yeah, a certain number of people do die. I'm like, okay, until I'm dying, let's not do that. And I wouldn't let them do it, so they did ultrasounds and all this stuff. And they didn't find it. They figured that it had passed out of me. So hopefully that was the last one that they'd missed while they were in there. And I was okay. I've been okay now for about a year or so. But, some parts of me have been taken out.
Like how much? Like
the gallbladder. The gallbladder helps you digest fat.
Have you changed a lot of your diet and stuff, because diet is.
I needed to at first. Now I can just eat anything. I needed to at first as soon as you'd eat anything with too much fat in it, like if it was Chinese food or anything, and I underestimated how much fat it had in it, immediately you'd have to go to the bathroom. Just pow. Like this, like you had to go, like it was death. The horrible pain of just like, you got to go now. And it was like this painful thing. But so I didn't for a long time eat any fat. Then after a while, the kidneys just adjust and you can just eat anything you want. And now I just eat anything I want. But, for a while, and then I'm in the process of getting back into shape and losing some weight, because for a while I was like, can't I have a piece of cake? I just died. I want to just eat whatever I want, because I'm like, I just died. If I want a piece of cake, I should have a cake. I could die tomorrow. I don't know. And that also makes me live my life a little bit differently, because I'm like, what do I really want to do? What do I really want to say? Because it's like, I don't know when it's going to happen again. The next to go will be my heart, or something will go wrong with my liver.
Yeah.
I don't know. But there's only a certain amount of time you have in your life. And by the way, when I was dead, there's nothing. There's no old man, there's no old Jewish man waiting for you over there, or a little man with horns.
Or do you think that maybe you just weren't there long enough? Because there are people who do flatline for like long periods of time.
Take your chance now. Get done what you want to get done, because you never know. My first wife died of cancer when she was 25 years old. That was it. 25. Man, that's very difficult.
25 is so young, man. 25 is so young. That's why I asked you too, like, how long you were out for, because there are stories, like there was a guy who died, I think, for like an hour, and he saw stuff. Like there's a lot of things, but then some people, like your situation, they're gone for however long.
The mind dreams. The mind is still able to dream and see when you're out, and that's what people are remembering, their dreams. But I didn't have any dreams like that. But I did have hallucinations when I was in the hospital. Every time I closed my eyes, I'd been on morphine for so long. It was causing these strange hallucinations. So every time I'd close my eyes, sometimes I would see these faces made out of like dead or rotting flesh, like talking to me, but I couldn't hear what they were saying. Or faces made out of dirt talking to me. Or I saw these weird membranes that like had little hairs growing on them, and you would kind of see through, and there was liquid on the other side, and they were undulating. Or I saw these strange...
What's undulating mean?
It's moving, like water's flowing through it in some way.
Did you feel like it was like a horrific thing? Like
some of it was oddly beautiful. There was these strange landscapes with a lot of blue foliage, and then there was also these animals that were like purple and pink, but I was too close to them to see what the shape of the animal was. I just see the side of the animal with all these muscles moving, and they were like pink and blue and purple, and hair growing on them, and sometimes the hair was sparse. I could see the skin underneath, and it was just all of these very strange hallucinations I was having from the morphine. And then also they put these things on your legs that like knead your legs, like squeeze your legs, keep from getting blood clots, because one of the things you die from in that is blood clots in your legs. So they had these things on my legs that were just constantly kneading my legs. And so sometimes I thought these were like hands of Satan, like pulling me down into hell, So I felt these, when I would wake up, I would feel these strange hands pulling me. And then there was this one point where my IV in my hand like came loose, and my hand like filled up with water. So I had like this huge puffy hand. And they were completely unconcerned with it. I was like, ah! But they were like, no, don't worry about it.
Were they just bad doctors and nurses?
There were some nurses that were wonderful. The doctors were good because I'm alive. I have this monster scar, and I was alive. They were joking. They were like, oh, your sex change operation went really well, stuff like that. And they
laugh.
Yeah, I kind of laughed a little bit, but it was a while before I could laugh. But I heard when I laughed too. There were staples there. It was just insane. I have like a picture of it. I lost most of the pictures I took of it. I have like one that I retrieved. Let me see if I can find it. You could put it on the podcast if you could.
Yeah, that's crazy.
Yeah, it's nuts.
Widbach. 100 from Boy. Oh, dude, you just voted for me? Dude, Wibdoc. Thank you, man. I just saw that somebody just voted. Thank you.
For you?
Yes.
Good.
Gracias. So
Good.
Yeah, let's see this. This is from his near-death experience in the hospital.
I'm looking for the picture there because I couldn't move, so I asked them for my phone, and then I took a picture of what was there. What was, and this is the only one I have. It's like part of it. Oh, there it is. But you can't really see that.
Jeez, man.
Let me go here. Let me go to...
I don't want to see it if it's open.
No, it's not open.
Yeah, because it's like a little too much,
Photo studio. Let's go to this. Let's go to bright.
Jeez, dude. Yeah, I can see it. Ugh, that makes my skin crawl.
Isn't that amazing?
That makes my skin crawl. Let's show the users if you can.
If you can see
if you can see it. Yeah, you might have to unplug your phone.
Let's see if we can
Yeah, this is intense.
save that. Save it. Oh, it's not doing it.
Yeah, there we go. Yeah, just hold that up to the camera. Yeah, you can see it. Hold it up to the camera. Jeez. Oh, gosh. Yeah, I'm like cringing for other people that are seeing that too.
Yeah,
That's so intense.
These 35 stables holding together, and then there's all these tubes too.
Jeez, man. Yeah, that's a lot. That's a little too much. Little too much. So.
And this is just part of
the. Were you depressed after?
You know, I was oddly resigned to just. This was I was oddly resigned to this. It could be the end of my life. That I was going to die. I didn't even call anyone. I think I called my brother and my sister, said goodbye to them, and because they didn't know if I was going to make it, I had less than a 50% chance. You know, I was sitting there, and they were wheeling people out of there every day that didn't make it. And then after 2 weeks, this order came through that said I was going to be taken down to the regular hospital. And they said, "Oh, that's very good," because most of the people that get sent down to the regular hospital get to go home. So it was just understanding, you know, really we are very fragile, you know, as people. That there is a time that we're all going to go, you know. It just reminded me of just that whole thing that, you know, we're not going to be here forever. You know?
Yeah.
So figure out what you want to do.
Did you feel like you didn't know that before? I mean, everybody knows that intellectually, but did you know that?
But I experienced it. I knew it more. You know,
Did it take away your fear of people?
It takes away my fear of everything, because I already died. I already went through the horrible, horrible death, horrible pain of death, dying in agony in the hospital, and dying and then coming back to life. So I'm not afraid of anything.
Yeah.
People try to intimidate me or scare me or whatever, and I'm like, yeah, I'm not afraid of anything because I already died. What else can you do to me?
Yeah.
I don't want to have a miserable life. I don't want to go to jail or anything like that. That would be horrible, you know. But
is there a partial surrender you feel to, like, you know, last time I talked to you, it was at your show.
Right.
And you seemed like you were kind of frustrated with comedy in some way, shape, or form. Now I want to ask this: was this post-death or pre-death?
That is, yeah, post-death. That whole show, yeah, that is. It's it is very difficult. Doing a show is very difficult because everyone thinks that you owe them something. It's weird. It's like I'm there putting myself in line. I'm like found the place, got the...
And everybody thinks that they belong on your show.
Everyone thinks they belong on my show, that they deserve to be on my show. Like people were coming up to me and going, you know, that they should somehow owe them something. And people were mad at me after I put them on my show because it's like, oh, I didn't put them up soon enough. I didn't give them enough time.
Yeah, you see how entitled a lot of comedians are. Yeah.
All this, they just very entitled. Like, how did I get to owe you something? You know, I paid for this sound system. You know, I came up here and set up. I dragged the sound system out of my apartment and put it here and brought it here in an Uber, set up the lights, which are mine, which is all mine. I bought it out of my own pocket. It's all on my credit card. And, you know, here I am doing this show, and somehow I had to beat people. And somehow I owe somebody something. Someone came up to me, they're like, you know, oh, you just don't want to put me up on your show because I'm LGBT or whatever. What is it?
LGBTQ?
Right. You know, and I'm like, oh, come on. You know, my show is...
You're not a homophobic guy.
My show is filled with, you know, every kind of diverse person I could possibly find. In fact, that's how I cast my shows.
Yeah.
To book my shows, like, okay, maybe that comedian isn't the greatest comedian in the world, but they're so different from everyone else on the show.
Mm-hmm.
And, I always try to have, men who are gay, women who are gay, the people that talked about that just because they were different from the last person that went up there.
Yeah, sure.
Anyone I can find is as diverse a group of people I can find. Asian, Hispanic, asexual, very sexual, political. I even have poets on there, just strange people that play the ukulele or performance artists. Like, God, what is his name? I had him on the show many, many times, just a straight performance artist. And poets as well. This guy's Arlen Lawson, who's amazing. Some people would get mad at me for having him on the show. And James Gautier I would have on the show.
Gautier,
he's a performance artist. And
why do I know that name?
Sometimes he would bomb and sometimes he would be hilarious. But he wasn't really trying to be funny. He was just very interesting and strange, and he was doing performance art. And just trying to have as many, as a diverse group of people as I possibly could. That's what I was interested in. And someone was saying that to me, and that's so ridiculous, because I would always include as many people from as many different walks of life I can have. But that's just an example of some of the ridiculous things that you hear and all these people that are pressuring. I mean, there was this girl that was crying because I put her up late. It's like, oh, man. And, I'm not naive, and I knew when I was coming into comedy, it's going to be hard. It's going to be difficult, and it's, you better not cry or whine, because it's going to be hard. There's some people that I know that come into the comedy world and the entertainment world, everything's handed to them. And that's fine for those people. I knew I wasn't going to be one of those people. Every single thing that I get in comedy is incredibly slow, incredibly, I work really hard just to get that next tiny, tiny little level where I'm getting booked, or I'm getting a little tiny bit of money, or I'm getting paid anything at all for doing comedy, or even gas money, or anything, going to open mics was terrible for years and years and years. It's just horrible. These open mics, and you have to pay, and you have to go there.
You have to pay to get up, and then you have to listen to a lot of bad comedy. And
horrible comedy forever. And there was this, and one place, I remember this one place, the guy hated me, and he always put me on last. You have to deal with stuff like that. And, it just took a long time. And, when I first started out, I was just a performance artist. It was funny. I remember a guy took me off of a show once. I'm like, why are you taking me off the show? They're laughing. You lit me to get me off the stage. I'm like, everyone was laughing. He's like, yes, but they weren't laughing because what you're saying is funny. They were laughing because what you're saying is so strange. Which is a form of comedy. This is what Andy Warhol did. He used strange, off-kilter, antisocial, sometimes antisocial behavior to elicit laughter. That's what Brian Holtzman does. That's what some other comedians do.
I don't ever see him anywhere.
Oh,
Brian
he's at the Comedy Store. Yeah, go there late. He's wonderful.
Yeah, he just offends
great.
everybody in the room, doesn't he?
He does. Sometimes, yes, he does. He's amazing. But again, he's, Andy Kaufman kind of inspired comedian. And I've talked to him about it a little bit. But, yeah, he doesn't use punchlines. Andy Kaufman didn't use punchlines. He uses strange, off-kilter behavior. And that's what I was doing. And I try to do that now, too. But I've added punchlines and joke structure to what I'm doing. So I try to use both now, and I'm honing it and working on it, and we'll see what happens. But people ask me all the time, Mark, should I quit doing stand-up? And I say, yes, because if you can quit, you're not a stand-up.
I know.
It's the people that cannot quit that may have a chance to get somewhere. A lot of people that couldn't quit are living in their car now. They're like old.
Yeah,
it's
scary. One thing I will say is, yeah, it's scary. But people say, like, if you're a real stand-up, you'll never quit. Like, so people say, like, oh, Eddie Murphy must not be a real stand-up because he stopped. I'm like, no, you can change. You can.
As soon as they get that movie money, man, they just don't even bother to fart in the direction of the comedy stage again. They're just like out of there.
If you get a few specials and then you get, like, consistent movies, I would rather have the movie career. But I do love stand-up. I legitimately love it. But I would rather have the movie career.
Yeah. That's what's interesting about Judd Apatow is he's still doing stand-up, even though he doesn't need to, and it's not any amount
But
of
he
money.
came back to it, though. He quit for like 15 years, So
he was really good, though. If you watch the old tapes, he was really good, yeah.
Was he?
And if you watch the, there's this book, it's called I'm Dying Up Here. And there's another one, I think it's called When Comedy Mattered. And what's great about those books is you can read those books, and they talk about the history of comedy and the comics that did matter. And if you don't know them, you can go now onto YouTube and see what they were doing and see their routines. You can even go back to the old guys in the Borscht Bell in the 60s, if you're reading about the history of comedy, and see what they did and see their routines, And they're writing about Lenny Bruce. You can go look at Lenny Bruce if you've never heard of him.
Yeah, I used to listen to him in high school.
It's wonderful.
I was actually super into all those older comics like Lenny Bruce, Mort Saul.
Yeah.
I grew up Smothers Brothers.
Yeah, I grew up just listening to comedy.
Yeah.
Comedy. Bob Newhart.
10 million viewers.
Comedy album.
Heck yeah, man.
We got all right.
Got 10 million viewers.
Really?
AKA 3. Each person is like 3.5 million. So
really
it counts to.
Well, that's good.
I'm being stupid, right? Because somebody just said 10 million viewers.
So what is this?
Yeah,
it
just us.
How many people watch this? You don't know.
Right now.
That's the thing about. That's
right
the thing
now,
about
no, you do know. Right now we have 3 people. Sorry, I count for 5. No. He counts for 5. Guess 3 counts for 5. So if there really is 5 people with him, then I'm going to guess there's about 8 people watching. But the thing says 3.
I started to do podcasts.
3. I'm doing the Donald Trump thing.
Just audio.
Yeah.
On my phone, eating lunch with comics or dinner in like a restaurant where I can find this quiet. And I did a few of them, and then I stopped. And I'm going to start again, probably doing them again. And it's just audio. In fact, I bought a microphone for this, and now I think I lost it. But I contacted the guy, and he's still willing to edit my show and put it up online. So
cool.
I might as well have hundreds of them out there. And then eventually, it would be nice to have, like Joe Rogan, to have, a studio and have the people in. But,
his podcast is really great.
It is really great, but he's got
really
the money.
He's got the money for great guests, and it has like the built-in draw. Yeah,
right.
But it took him a while, to be able to build that up.
And that's good. He had the money to give because he gets checks, so that's good.
Yeah,
that was a whole different. That's a whole different ball game. I
know. No, go ahead.
I know people who've did it for 10 years and now they're starting to get a little bit of money. 12 years, starting to get a little bit of money. I know people that lived in their car for like 3 years doing 5 open mics a day who just never got anything out of it. Can't even get booked.
Mm-hmm.
On a crappy show somewhere. And
is it because they're not funny? You feel?
They're just not good. They're just not good. Then there's people that aren't good, but they have some kind of charisma, or they're really popular or in with the right crowd. And it's the entertainment industry. There's beautiful women that get put up because they're beautiful women.
Oh, dude! What I will say is this. And of course, I'm never going to say this to any of my female comics because, like Friends, because they deal with. They'll be mad at me. They'll be mad, but like the thing is female comics, they do have to put up with certain things that we don't see.
Sure.
But
I agree.
Thing that I will say, and I've seen it time and time again, somebody who I'm consistently funny. Like I get up all the time. I like work like hard. I will see a girl that's been doing stand-up for, let's say, a year and a half, 2 years, and it will be like, and she will be like on a whole other level, and will still like be like, I'm like grinding out here, and it's like, yeah, I get it. Like she is working hard, but it's because like comics, it's like if you put a girl, and it doesn't even matter how beautiful they are, but if you put a girl in a prison system.
Mm-hmm.
those guys are going to be sticking their hands through the bars.
Right.
A lot of comics do not get the light of day with women, so when a girl comes around, they're sticking their hands out and everything, and giving like a lot of attention, and there's a lot of false promises and a lot of false, like feeding of the other person's ego.
That's another thing that was doing.
Not for all women, but that happens,
I was doing that in my show, and there were women that wanted to be on the show, and they were flirting with me, and then after they were done, after they were on my show, then they stopped flirting with me,
Yeah, of course.
And it's like, you don't have to do that. Just make sure your comic doesn't suck. I'm going to try to find people that are good. And then there are people that just have cute personalities, and they're adorable, like they're a kitten playing with string while they're up there. And then there's that too, And like I kept putting this one person up, this one girl up at my show, and the woman who was kind of my manager at the time was saying, "Well, is she any good?" I say, "Well, you put her up for like short set because she doesn't really have any material, but she's adorable." Okay, so we put her up there for a while, and it had a certain appeal, and that was that. But if you are a beautiful woman, and the guys are fawning over you and putting you on their show because they think you're going to have a chance with them, and they're not guys that are usually used to being around beautiful women, use it to your advantage to get a bunch of stage time and get fucking good.
Here's the
and
thing.
A lot of those girls do, and good for them,
You know what? It is irritating, but it also, at the same token, like, any guy who gets irritated would be doing the same thing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Because really, when you think about it, they're not doing anything wrong.
Right.
They really aren't. They're not doing anything that's, offsetting or whatnot. But it's still, it's irritating when you work so hard and then you see, like, a girl that's like a bombshell just be like,
right. It's the entertainment industry, and looks do matter, and that's how it is. The male comics can be trolls. A lot of the female comics are trolls, and there's some really traditional, I guess you would say, female comics that aren't traditionally beautiful, shall we say. Yeah. And they're fantastic, and they have to be good, and they didn't get anywhere because, Roseanne Barr didn't get anywhere because of sex appeal, Maybe some people do find her very sexy. Good for them, But she's a very attractive person. I mean, I love her. I watched her show religiously. I kind of grew up with her. But, no one handed her anything, because she was beautiful. No one put her up there. But other people, they do get breaks because of their physical attractiveness. I have been put on some shows and given some leads and gotten some things because some women thought that I was attractive, and good for them, good for me, but you also have to back that up on the stage. I remember being. Yeah,
you have to be able to hold your own.
I've been on shows where people are like, the other comics are grumbling, "Why did he put her up there? She sucks." Blah 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 blah. Well, he's trying to date her. That's why the booker is trying to date her, put her up there. He just wants an attractive girl to be up there, and then that's fine. The guys like it. The girls like it too, to a certain extent. They
because it gives more diversity for the show. But there are really funny female comics. But the thing I think that's frustrating is it takes a few years to get good at stand up.
Right.
And these girls get on these shows before they're good. Because of sex appeal.
Right.
And that. And am I saying that they shouldn't accept that? No, because anybody's going to accept anything that's thrown at you when you start stand up. But it's just annoying.
I would try.
But I don't even point it out because there's no point. It's just going to pick an argument, and you're just going to. Yeah,
there's no point in complaining.
It just is what it is.
I was always able to find. I'm trying to towards the end when I was doing my show, and I want to do it again, and try to put as many girls on the show as guys as I could put on the show. And there are a lot of really good comics. And again, if you're looking for, as I was, people who are completely different from the last comic that went up and from the other comedians that are up on the stage or have been up there, on the whole show, a lot of these women, if you just give them a chance, can be really good. you know, and you just give them a chance to go up there and do their thing and shine. And there are a lot of really good comics, and a lot of them have female comics, and a lot of them have a very different point of view.
Yeah,
than
and
a lot
you need
of the
that
men.
in comedy.
And you need, for me, on my show, man, you need that. If you go to a certain kind of comedy show, there are so many comics doing the same thing, stepping on each other's material all the time.
Definitely.
And you've got to go, you know, like everyone's doing Trump jokes now, but my Trump jokes are so different from everyone else's, I don't even worry about it. But to a certain extent, you know, you've got to listen to the comics that go before you, and if they're talking about a lot of those same things, you've got to take that out of your set. You know, it's called it's called stepping on each other's material.
Yeah.
And I go to certain shows, and there's a lot of stepping on each other's material.
Oh, heck yeah.
And you have to watch that, and I don't want that on my shows. Don't want that.
Let
on
me
my
ask
shows
you
at
this
all.
too. As far as we were just talking about Trump jokes and everything, I know you're a libertarian.
Right.
Okay, so I am not super familiar with what libertarian is. Like,
okay.
I would say in this last election, at first, this is to show how much of a political flip flopper I am. At first, I was like, Gary Johnson sounds cool, and then I was like, Jill Stein sounds cool. You know, and they're two totally different things. So
Right.
I am politically confused. I used to be a very political person, but I always like to bring it up on the show, like whenever I have people on, because people have different viewpoints, and it's like, were you a GJ?
I was a libertarian party official for a long time. I was the Southern Vice Chair of the California Libertarian Party, which is one of the most important positions in the Libertarian Party nationally, because Southern California has the most registered libertarians and the most official dues-paying party members, and a lot of the money is raised nationally out of Southern California. So it was a very important position, and I was doing that, and I did an educational TV show, which you can still find online, and I did I also ran for office as a libertarian. I got about 8% of the vote. And
8% is a lot,
it's
dude.
a lot for a libertarian.
Wait, that's a lot.
You
got 8% of the libertarian vote.
I had a public access show at the time, the educational TV show that I was doing. And it was shown in New York. I think they still show it in San Diego.
You've lived the most amazing life. For our viewers who are watching, he's died and come back to life in the hospital, retired off of punk rock records.
Yeah.
Went to art school, did performance art. Like, now you do comedy. Like, that's
now
why.
I do comedy.
And you're a libertarian. Like, you were kind of have a broad stroke of I'm thinking of the right words to say.
Always looking for an adventure. I'm always looking for a new
adventure. Yeah, you've lived quite the
adventure.
life, my man.
Yeah, I try. And now I have a lot to talk about, which is good to do comedy. You know, reminds me of Bukowski, Charles Bukowski, the great American realist writer.
I know him. I just haven't read him.
Oh, you should. There was a certain point in his life where he said, okay, I want to be a writer, but you know what? I don't know enough yet. I haven't lived enough. So he would get out a map of the United States, spin it, and put his finger down. And wherever that town was, he would buy a bus ticket and go there. Get a job, get drunk, live on the street. Whatever happened, fall in love with a prostitute. Whatever it is that would happen, he would go there and do it.
That's kind of like personal development in a twisted, weird way. Do you know what I mean? Like, it's sort of like self-help therapy type stuff, but in a weird...
So I have all these experiences in life now, and I'll talk about them as time goes on. You know, I've got dealing a lot now with my family and alcoholism and my jokes and writing lots of jokes about my parents being alcoholics.
Yeah.
But they're jokes about try to tell a serious story, but make you laugh. You know, there's a performance art at the basis of it, but trying to tell everything through a comedy format. And comedy is, you know, there's a lot of tragedy in comedy too, so that works. You know, and
yeah, there definitely is.
I now, you know, go out. Last night I performed and I did really great, you know, and there's always something, or at least I think it did, for, you know, what I want to do and to get laughs. We're in this bar where a lot of people weren't able to get laughs and I was, and that's good. But, there's going to be other days where, I get mediocre laughs and other people, of course, are doing better. But, you always want to be the comic that always is getting laughs.
Yeah,
all
that's the pitfall, though, in comedy, though, dude. Like, you want to get laughs all the time, but in order to be a good comedian that speaks from, like, your center or whatever, you have to, like, divorce yourself from that. There comes a point where the first few years are spent, I feel like, learning how to get laughs and how to tell proper material on stage, where to pause and blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
And then what happens is there's some people who get so addicted to the laughs, they get addicted to their material because they're like, if I do this every time, it will work.
Right.
But the exciting thing about comedy is when you just throw that out and you're like, okay, I might suck tonight because I'm tired, I'm not in a good mood, and I'm going to do new stuff.
Right.
And if I do new stuff, then, we'll see what happens,
What interests me is the creative process, and a lot of times that can be just going out and making stuff up as you go along,
Mm-hmm.
Just does something inspire you there? Do you have a heckler? Whatever it is, what's going to happen, and that's the thing that interests me is the creative process of it. And there are comics that just go out with the same jokes for years and years and years and years, and really don't care about anything but laughs, and that's it. There's no theme to what they do. There's no character. They just joke. They're all unrelated to each other. Just about kind of get laughs. And that can be wonderful. And it can also be kind of empty in a way, too. Audiences now are more sophisticated. I think one of the reasons that Louis C.K. is so popular now is
people
want to
hear the truth.
So much. Yeah.
People want to hear the truth. And it doesn't even have to be, like, from a dark place. It's just, like, whatever your truth is. Like, what's vulnerable about you? What is the one thing? You cannot be cool and be a great comedian. You have to talk about whatever it is that you struggle with, whatever. Like, you have to take off the armor on stage.
Right.
And that's why it hurts so bad to be a comic, because if you're not getting the laugh, you're also getting pierced. Because if you're like that scene in Freddy Krueger in Nightmare on Elm Street where he opens up his chest and there's like the lost souls in his stomach. That's kind of what your comedy should be like,
Well, the
funny, but still the same.
There's so many, we're talking about certain comics, they learn how to be funny after a certain amount of time, and then there's this other factor. There's this other thing. Like there's this show called it's just a comedy video that came out, and it's got a bunch of women comics in it, and I don't know who they are except one of them was Amy Schumer.
Mm-hmm.
And Amy, some people talk about her comedy sucks now, blah, 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 blah. And maybe it's not as good as it used to be, but, she was very funny. She still is very funny. I still like her. But she's got funny plus that extra thing. There's that X factor, that extra thing that just makes you look. Like I watched, there's 6 female comics on this thing. It's called Very Funny Women, or Women Who Kill. That's what it's called.
Mm-hmm.
You can see it on YouTube. So there's 6 female comics on it. They're all good. They all get laughs. But Amy Schumer is good. She gets laughs. Plus, she has this other thing that makes her stick out, that makes you look at her, makes you remember her name, and there's that extra thing that's there. Louis C.K., I get it through hard work. If you look at his old stuff, it's good, it's funny, it's interesting, it's edgy, it's incredible, a lot of it. But he doesn't really pull it together until he starts to talk about raising his daughters, because then he humanizes himself, and then makes you interested in him as a person. I remember there was a female comic, and she's a lesbian comic, and she is a bit overweight, and she's usually wonderful. But I was listening to her set. Saw her live, and about halfway through her set, she talked about coming out to her dad that she was gay and what that experience was. Then I listened. Then I was interested in her. Then I wanted to hear what she was saying. Before that, it was like the teacher on, Charlie Brown.
Yeah.
It was like that. Oh, comedy. Then she starts going, and then I came out to my dad one day in my garage, and trying to tell my dad that I'm gay. Then suddenly I was engaged. I think that's what happened with Louis C.K. too, is that he started talking about, that human experience. A lot of people also, that reminds me also of Bill Cosby. I know everyone hates Bill Cosby, but I grew up with Bill Cosby in the 70s, and he was on every single talk show there was all the time. And he would come out, and he would never talk about being black, although there was the elephant in the room. He wouldn't talk about the experience of being an African American. Nothing to do with that. What he talked about was raising a family, raising children, being a child, and growing up in America, and the American experiences that all of us had. And that's all he would talk about. And that's what the Cosby Show was about. And his message was to everyone, we are exactly like you. There were a lot of other comics that were like F.U. Whitey, and that's great too. And those were great comics. But Bill Cosby never did that. He wore a suit. He wore a tie. He was, he came up and he was smarter than you, funnier than you, more educated than you, probably better looking than you, and made more money than you. And you related to him. And Bill Cosby did so much, and other entertainers did so much to end that kind of racist kind of feelings and feelings of separations that Americans had, especially with the Cosby Show too, his show, because he made it not about how African American people are different from everyone else, and there are differences. He made it about how we are the same. And he would go on those shows, and his comedy was about raising your children in America.
Sameness, yeah.
Having a mother in America, and your relationship with your mother, your relationship with your father, your relationship with your child, raising your kids. And that was an incredible thing to do then. And there were so many incredibly sophisticated artists like himself. His comedy was great. And, it's sad that legacy is kind of lost now. And, just in American culture, too, there were great African-American scientists and stuff like that. We never hear about that. We're starting to hear a little bit about it now. They're starting to make movies about some of those people. And that's wonderful. But, what people would see, too, were, the jazz musicians and the rock musicians and Jimi Hendrix and a lot of the people that were in pop culture and Sidney Poitier. When those people came into pop culture, people that were raised in this kind of racist environment and heard this racism from their parents, that they were being told that, African American people were stupid or whatever, reasons for prejudice. They would listen to the great jazz artists and say, that's incredibly sophisticated. And the great blues singers and the great rock and roll singers and the great pop singers too, and who were African American. And that did so much to destroy prejudice, I think, in America.
Definitely.
All that stuff. And also, when the black athletes started to come in and compete, in basketball, baseball, football, everything, we saw that sophistication as well and that excellence in what they were doing, and that helped also. It was basically a lot of pop culture. I don't know how it got off on that tangent, but I was talking with something you reminded me about Bill Cosby and how
how
it
did
was
we
sad.
even get on topic of any?
I don't know.
Any of this.
It was just so growing up with him. You just Cosby did so much, and you could kind of see it in what Cosby was doing. He did it really in a brilliant way. And in fact, I heard somebody talking about the Playboy Club where he used to work. That was one of the first places.
I wonder if it was intentional on Cosby's beat. Actually, it probably was, because I think Cosby is a very intentional person.
Yeah, because you hear, he during the Cosby Show, he used to bring in psychologists and talk to him about the scripts and say, is this a positive way to portray African Americans? So he was always concerned about that. And he would do that in his stand-up, and there was a huge, because of Cosby and other people like him, there was a huge sea change in America because of that stuff, and it was constantly the younger generation was growing up looking at it, admiring a lot of the black entertainers and stuff like that, and, and musicians. And, you know, if their parents were telling them one thing, you know, watching Bill Cosby's show or listening to his comedy was telling you another thing. And so as each generation goes along, the next generation buys the racist ideas of the former generation less and less and less.
Yeah, that's smart. Like, just being able to understand that, because honestly, yeah, I mean, I was obsessed with Cosby whenever I was. I mean, he was a giant to me, you know, Bill Cosby. I mean, obviously, like Bill Cosby and Richard Pryor, they kind of go hand in hand because they were around at the same time.
But they were opposites.
But they're opposites. I was a Richard Pryor fan more so because I do like the raw, gut level honesty, you know, and like Richard Pryor. Still, though, Richard Pryor poked fun at racism and would like kind of give the finger to white people, but yet the white people were kind of okay with it. You know, like no one. That was the other. But maybe it was because Bill Cosby broke those walls down first. Maybe that's why. But I mean, Richard Pryor. If you were to ask who's the better comic, I actually really don't know, because Bill Cosby is a masterful storyteller. You know, I think if you want to say best stand-up, period, now I would still say Richard Pryor.
Yeah, you can't really compare the two. They're so different from each other.
But, you know, I just mean overall, you know.
Yeah, I had all those records growing up, too, and listened to all that. And he used to have he had TV shows, which I would watch in rerun. He had that show before. And
Richard?
I would always, Bill Cosby. He had a show, Hula, dun, 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 dun. That was the theme. And I used to watch it all the time. I'd always see him on, and then also he was on I Spy before that. And he was like one of the first, you know, you saw everywhere. So it's sad. It's sad to see that legacy and all that he did very intentionally kind of go down the tubes. It's kind of sad.
Yeah.
But you know, we all have our fallacies. You know, we all have our weaknesses and our problems, and
that's a pretty big one, though, man.
And our fetishes.
That's not just a fallacy, though. That's a little more on the, you know.
Yeah, no, it's a terrible thing. And I'm not minimizing anything at all, but it's just like, you know, it's also like the 70s too was a time when everyone was taking dope and getting high and screwing. And if you're a person that's a predator who has some kind of, you could hide in there very easily. You know, I'm just partying, we're just having a good time, blah, 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 blah. You know, and that was the 70s and the 80s. You know, people
Do you know
were...
Jamar Neighbors?
Yeah, kind of, a little bit.
Yeah, oh gosh, he's so funny. Jamar has a joke about Bill Cosby to where he's like, he has a way to make very offensive stuff, like very funny.
Right.
He's such a funny dude. And one night he goes on stage and Jamar asks everybody in the audience, he goes, how many females here would have sex with Bill Cosby? He goes, would you have sex with Bill Cosby? And she's like, mm-mm. And he goes, would you have sex with Bill Cosby? And she's like, mm-mm. She goes, would you have sex with Bill Cosby? Mm-mm. He goes, and that's why he did it. Like,
you know,
and then everyone just like laughed, but it was his delivery. But still, though, I mean, that's a funny joke. Not that he doesn't. I know Jamar. He didn't really believe that way.
No. Yeah,
but it's like it's a funny way to be able to make light of something.
I think too
that
that
pisses
women,
everybody off. You know.
What's weird about it too is that, you know, I know this is old talking about Cosby, but what's weird about it is that we're probably women just throwing themselves at Bill Cosby all day.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
of course. I
mean,
if you're famous, it's going to happen.
And how did he manage to get in all this trouble anyway? You know, it's like because he had some kind of a weird fetish for wanting to have sex with women that were passed out or unable to defend themselves or whatever. Some kind of a weird fetish.
This music is making what we're talking about even better.
Even weirder.
It's even
so,
weird.
You know, how did he manage to get in all the trouble? You know, you're on top of the world. It's always weird, you know, you see those people that are on top of the world. He could, you know, I'm sure if he wants to have sex with a bunch of different women all day, I'm sure that he could.
You know, the other
and
thing,
they'd be
too.
more than willing.
The other theory also is when you're on top, you hear no and no less and less.
Right.
You know, so there becomes a blurring line of what's okay. Like, to me, I'm like, I would never do that. But, like, I think what lays dormant underneath your power, like, I have a bad temper. So I think, you know, for me, having a lot of power, that could resurface in ways I've never, you know what I mean, in ways I've never dealt with. Like, I don't have an inclination to, like, have sex with girls that are passed out. That's that's not laying dormant somewhere. That's not gonna. No, it creeps me out. You know, and I don't even like strippers for that reason. I've been to a strip club twice.
I was married to a stripper. There's another bunch of stories I could tell you.
It doesn't do anything for me. And a lot of my guy friends are like, "Why, are you gay?" And I'm like, "No, like it's like it doesn't. It's an act. Like she's working. Like it doesn't do anything for me."
I have women that hit on me when they're drunk. Like, I have friends that are women or girlfriends, and when they are drunk, they hit on me. They're aggressive sexually. Then, when they're not drunk, they're like, you know.
Well, it's like power. It comes,
I used to have this.
I
used to have this roommate, and when she was drunk, she would just put her arms around me and just give me these like soul kisses, just like, and you could see in her eyes this love. And then when she wasn't drunk, she was kind of cold a little bit to me. And it's very strange. And other women who are very aggressive, and I have to have a talk with them. I'm like, you know, when you are stoned, you know, when you get drunk, which could be often, you're very aggressive with me sexually, you know. And I know you know that, but you don't want to talk about it, or it makes you uncomfortable or whatever. And, you know, you have to talk about it with these women, because it's like,
I still don't believe it.
I don't feel like I don't want to think I'm taking advantage of her if I say yes or whatever, you know?
Right. Yeah, no, I know exactly what you mean. And the other thing is, too, is I think it's easier. I do understand a girl can't really sexually harass you as a guy. And I know, like, some guys get up in arms and are like, oh, yeah, she can. No, she can't. Really? Like, it just goes to show in society, and it's been this way forever, and it's like even from like a biological level. I mean, even I'm a skinny guy, but I still have like I you know, some guys would even be like, you're built like a woman, but like but I'm a skinny guy, but I still have like testosterone coursing through my brain, like, so I can overpower most women.
Right.
So with
that
being said, society should favor women whenever it comes to like sexual harassment, because like if a girl grabs my leg, you know, like I'm not gonna like be like, ah! You know, and like wonder for my safety.
Right.
But if a girl goes out and meets a new guy, she's wondering if she's gonna get her head cut off. And guys, even the way you hit on women, like hitting on women even by itself is a really delicate balance, because it's like you got to do it, because if you don't do it, you're going to be alone for the rest of your life. But if you do it, you also have to be masterful to where you have to pick up all kinds of things on body language and stuff to make sure that you're not being weird.
Yeah.
Because a girl can easily take you as being like a weird guy. I've approached girls before, and when I see like it's like, oh, they're just having a bad day or whatever, like I'm like, look, blah 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 blah. I even sometimes call it out. I'll be like, I'm sorry if I made you blah blah.
Right.
And then they'll usually loosen up and start laughing like, I'm sorry, it's just one of those days. Because women do get like 50 guys, you know, with their penis in their hand, walking up to them in a grocery store, and it's like, hey, you want something different?
Yeah, that's an all day thing for like especially young attractive women. And I've had young attractive women tell me, you know, I'm so sick of guys hitting on me. I tell them, listen, a few more years, a few more pounds, it'll all go away.
Does it really ever,
just
though?
Enjoy. Oh, yeah. Women talk to me about it, because, you know, I'm getting older. I know a lot of older women, and, you know, they talk to me about it. And, you know, a lot of times during
but there's
the day,
a market for the cougars, you know?
There is, but there's a cougar, and then there's a cougar. There's a cougar, and then there's a really old cougar.
Like
and then there's a gilf, right? there's the MILF, and then there's the GILF, right? So you've got, and a lot of guys, that's not their taste, and it's less and less guys that's going to be their taste as they get older. And so, it does go away. And I have a lot of women talk to me about when they get to a certain age, that pretty much the interest drops off. And it's very difficult because if they were very attractive when they were younger, suddenly their life is changed completely.
Well, you mean the interest from other men?
From interest from men.
Okay, because what happens with the two sex drives is they go like this.
Right.
You know what I mean?
I
like
get women.
Females, it goes up, and then guys, it's like goes down. Typically.
I know a lot of women that hit on me, and they're wonderful people. Wonderful friends.
Well, you know what it is?
Every time I see them, there's an offer of something sexual, or they're touching me, or whatever. And that's
You're
fine.
a very easy person to talk to,
and
you don't come off. Which I'm not a girl, so maybe I get a different vibe. I don't know how you are around women,
right?
But you don't give off a want something from you vibe, And I think that's a breath of fresh air for a lot of girls, to where it's like, they can actually talk to you, and you're not you're not subtly everything's like a little pocket hole to be able to hint at sex.
I would hope so. But so many women, it's like a lot of women in a lot of places that I go. No matter what I say to them, they think that I'm hitting on them, and I think a lot of it's true with a lot of female comics, but it seems because a lot of guys are hitting on them all day. They're there in a place where they're one girl and there's 20 guys. You go to an open mic or a comedy show or whatever, there's one female comic and 20 male comics, or one female comic and 20 other guy comics there at the open mic. So it's a I'll have to call her back.
Is that your girl?
No, that is a girl. I can't even reject this phone call. Come on, turn off.
Sometimes if you hit your volume thing.
Yeah, that's a girl that is a girl that she's a friend, and she's very aggressive with me sexually, and I'm not really all that into her. But she's amazing to me, and I love her. She's like a friend. I love her as a friend, but I'm not all that interested in her. But
maybe that's why she's aggressive, is because you put her in the friend zone. Nobody likes to be turned down. you can pull out a lasagna, a meatless lasagna right now in front of me. I don't want that lasagna. It's good because you can't have it. And I'm all of a sudden I want that lasagna now.
Right.
It's nobody wants to be rejected by anybody.
There's a lot of girls, when I get to a certain age, they're not interested. They're not in the market for me at all. They're not in the market for a guy that's my age, and period. And there's a lot of young girls, though, that they are in the market. Younger girls, women in their 30s. Usually I go with girls in their 30s. Girls that are my age, if I find a woman that's my age that I'm attracted to, they don't want to go out with me usually. Less so than a lot of the girls in there that are younger than that. But I do, a lot of my girlfriends, for whatever reason, they like an older man. And a lot of girls don't. They think it's creepy and weird. Oh, that's gross. Is that your girlfriend? Oh, that's gross. She's too young for you, Mark, or whatever. Mm-hmm. But it's not like it's like sociologists have taken couples and they say, write down the date where you first met became aware of this person that you're with, okay, whether you're married or whatever, been going out with them. The women are always 3 weeks to 3 years ahead of the men. The woman will see a man, and she will put herself in the area of the man. If she's interested in him, she will put himself, go over and transfer to his office, and work there. Even if she's her boss, it doesn't really matter. But, she'll need a ride home, one day, and he's the only guy in the office or whatever. The woman pursued the man, but the man has to think that he went after the woman. But what happened was the woman put herself in the place first where the man could even have access. because she was interested.
But you have to
in
pay
him.
attention too. You know.
And you have to pay attention.
I remember in
to
high
that.
school there were girls that liked me, and like I was like just so like dumb just
Oh,
about
no.
the
Oh,
fact
God.
that, and even in
Oh,
college,
God, yes.
even in
college too. My whole
Yeah.
life. Yesterday, I'm such an idiot.
But there's like subtle cues, and it's like weird because it's like a leprechaun leaving you coins or like an Easter egg
Right.
hunt. Like it's like because it's not gonna, no one's ever just gonna come out and be like, hey, you're hot. Like even on those swipe apps,
Right.
like if I matched with a girl and then she was like, hey, you're super sexy. I'm like, this is really a guy. Like,
Yeah.
like just like out of the gate, like if it's like, oh, you're so hot, I like, you're just a babe. I want to see you without your shirt on. It's like this is. There's some balls in there somewhere.
Right.
It's just there's no escaping it.
Occasionally, it happens, but the
On average,
on average, it's not going to happen. But it does happen here and there. But a lot of times it happens with a lot
it's
of
like
women
subtle
that
though,
I'm
man.
not interested
Playing with hair,
in.
whatever, all that different
Right.
stuff.
Yeah. You never know, and then you can think you see all the signals,
And then
once
you
you
were
move
wrong.
forward, you're doing it
Whoa.
wrong. However it is you're accepting their advances, you're doing it wrong. So it's like, and
Yeah.
I remember all these times in college, there all these women hitting on me, and I think back and go, oh, that girl was hitting him. It was so stupid. The foggiest idea. What the hell, I was doing at all. Just such an idiot, and I regret it so much. But I came from just a horrible family, so I had no social skills whatsoever.
Right, you had to learn those later in life. Yeah, that makes sense.
I had to learn them later in life, and I'm still learning. I'm still trying. It's every day. I'm still trying to learn.
There's always a social offness, though, about people anybody who's a good artist has a little bit of that. The thing is to have enough of it to make you funny, but not to have too much to where you creep people out in the room. You know what I mean? To where I have a friend, so funny, so funny. There's no reason. He's one of the funniest comics you'll ever see, but he just creeps people out, because he's very staid and very just has does not have a strong personality, and because he doesn't have that, it's almost like he doesn't have a sense of self when he's in social situations. He just has a blank stare and a blank face, and on stage he's so funny, but because of that, I think that he creeps people out a little bit. It's get a creepy serial killer vibe from him, and he's not, but I mean, you have to be personable on some level, because if you don't have that,
I'm sure that I rubbed some people the wrong way. For everyone out there, I'm sorry.
You don't rub me the wrong way, but maybe I'm a huge weirdo.
Some people I do, and I'm sure. And I'm
really?
sure I've been
Have
an
they said
idiot.
that to you?
Oh yeah. And there's some people I'm sure I've been. Some women I'm sure I've been an idiot to, and I'm sure there's other women I've been an idiot to. Yesterday. And because I'm so dumb, I have the foggiest idea. I was.
You don't pick up social cues?
I do, but sometimes wrong, or sometimes I don't get them.
But it's because of your upbringing. You're not like.
It varies from person to person. There was one girl I just went out with. She was saying, but we were talking about going out. She was about I have a boyfriend. We can't go out. And I'm like, well, break up with your boyfriend and go out with me.
That's more of just a cocky thing. That's not really a socially off.
And she did break up with her boyfriend and went out with me, at least for a while. We had a relationship that I'm still very fond of her. But and she said that was amazing. She said I was waiting my whole life for a guy to say that to me. There's really someone who knows what they want. Because you knew what you wanted. I knew wanted me. But then other women
that worked for that girl. That's what I was gonna say.
Other women, that could be creepy.
That could be creepy.
Totally.
And the fact that she's so it really just depends on where the person is in your life. And I guess the point blank thing is, if you do approach women, some of them are gonna think you're creepy.
Yeah.
Just because it's, geez, dude, we're in a grocery store. Geez, dude, blah blah blah. But there's a certain thing, don't do it in a parking lot at night when the lights are off.
Right,
you know what I
right.
mean? To where you just approach a girl, don't do it
offer
when it's
to
dark.
walk her to
I
her
won't
car.
even make sometimes, and I used to if there was a cute girl on the sidewalk and it was at night, like I would smile, you know, and just kind of like nod my head and keep going. Because I don't want to stop and talk to her and make her feel unsafe. But now sometimes just because I get it a little bit more now, if it's really late and we're walking past each other, I won't even look at her because I just don't want her to feel like, you know what I mean? Like I empathize with that because I've gotten hit on by like, okay, I'll give you an example. The other night I was at Tribal Cafe and I was just going to go up. And this has nothing to do, like, I'm not, like, homophobic in the slightest.
Right.
Dudes are dudes. It doesn't matter whether you're gay, straight, bi, whatever your orientation is. I could care less. But guys are guys, you know? And I got a dose of just how guys can be creepy. So I'm sitting down eating my tacos, and this guy is, like, looking behind me. Yeah. And I'm just like, shit, I don't want to deal with this right now. Yeah. And then, like, because I'm already in a bad mood, and he's like just doing that, like being creepy, and like trying to like talk to me, and so I'm like eating, and I just kind of put my head down because I would have been nice, like I'm not in a threatening situation, and normally I wouldn't care, but it was the way he was doing it was just so it was like uncouth. If he would have turned around and be like, "Hey, dude, you're really attractive," I'd be like, "Dude, thanks," but the fact that he was like. You know, and like doing this with his hair and stuff, and like I'm just like, and a lot of guys do that because it's like this in between of do I approach, do I not approach, and I got that, and I got how women would get that to where if I was a girl and guys were doing that to me all day, to where when I did see a guy who was like assertive and knew what he wanted and was gonna approach, I'd be like, crap, get away from me, dude.
Yeah, I've had men hit on me, and you know, right away, you know, they understand I'm straight. And leave me alone, or they get that, you know, coming from me right away. But if not, you know, immediately talk about girls.
See, here's the thing for me. It doesn't even really bother me. Like, I really don't care. But it's like if somebody's doing, I get hit on a lot. It's because I have feminine traits. You know, okay. I have like skinny hands. You know, I my teeth are really white. You know, I wear V-necks. I can understand why someone would think that I swing that way, but I just don't. You know? But whenever it happens, as it does quite frequently, I'm just like, normally don't care, but it's like just don't be weird. Yeah. Like, don't be weird. Like, a good portion of my friends, like, you know, are either bi or gay, you know, in the comedy community even. Right. And it's like there is
I have good friends that are gay as well.
There's even like a thing to where they'll be like, oh yeah, no, it's because you're hot, bro. But like it's a funny like thing. Like, honesty is the best policy. And I think what makes something creepy is indecisiveness. Yeah. You know, and when somebody's like, you know, that do I go up to this person? Do I not? Do I? And we all do that, but it's creepier when guys do it. And
you know, no matter what I say, you know, there's always going to be some girl that's, you know, not going to like it or think it's wrong or whatever. And you just you know, just move.
Women are creepy too, dude, but they have eyelashes, so we don't notice it.
Right. You know, there's all kinds of weird things. You know, I have no idea. Like, you know, yeah, I have no idea when a woman is hitting on me. You're just an idiot, you know, and that's... Yeah. So, you know, if you're a girl out there, you know, be really obvious, because I'm not going to have the foggiest idea. I'm an idiot. Men are idiots. If you're a girl and you like a guy, you have to be really obvious.
Sometimes it's a cultural thing, too.
Men are just stupid.
I think a lot of white girls leave more clues. I feel like black girls are more forward, you know, with
maybe. I don't know. It depends. You know, that could be a stereotype too. It depends.
Just in my experience,
it depends. It depends on the girl. You know, I have a thing, I think, for tall black women, tall dark-skinned women. I've gone out with many tall dark-skinned women. Huh?
Taller than you?
Yeah, and I don't know, you know, why that is, but, you know, it just is. You know, I notice them. And some people think, they were surprised that, I almost married a tall, beautiful Nigerian woman from, she was from Texas. She had two Nigerian parents. And she was from Texas, and she was tall and gorgeous and had a Texas accent. And it was just the most adorable thing in the world. And we were we were really close for a long time. And then it kind of dissolved. So almost a third wife.
Yeah, hey man, everybody's got to find somebody, no matter what your orientation, you need to find somebody. It's what's the Queen song? Somebody to love, somebody to love,
And every cliche out there, So how long does this podcast go on?
So we'll probably actually wrap up here in a second. Because I know
talking about girls, talking about death, talking about punk rock, talking about business, talking about libertarianism.
Talked about you starting your own business.
What is libertarianism? Let's talk about what exactly libertarian is.
Yeah, because there's a lot of people. It's been massively linked in with Republican.
Yeah, well, it used to be actually. When I first joined the Libertarian Party, there was a whole bunch of granola crunching, tree hugging hippie-tarians. And there used to be a lot more of them, and there still are. But what happened is the rhetoric because of talk radio, the rhetoric of the Libertarian Party leaned a little bit right.
Everybody thinks you're very Viva la Trump,
But right. There's Gary Johnson, and Gary Johnson hates Trump and thinks he's insane. And Gary Johnson was also the most qualified candidate. He's actually a guy who's been governor of a major state for 2 terms. And Hillary hadn't done that, and neither certainly has Trump. He'd never been elected. But being a libertarian means basically that you're against the initiation of force. It means, okay, if you're against initiating force, it means you're not a pacifist. You would defend yourself if you so choose, okay? But it means you're against initiation of force. So then, what does that mean? Well, usually you're against war unless it's blatant self-defense. Did you provoke the other person into attacking you? Well, did you have an army base in their country? Yeah. You've had an army base there for many, many years. Well, maybe you should remove that army base. And taxes, too. It's like, okay, Obamacare, great idea. Everyone should have health care. But a certain amount, if you don't pay your Obamacare tax, you're going to have to pay a fine. If you don't pay the fine, you could be arrested. You can be put in jail. That's the initiation of force by the government. Yeah. So are we going to, there was a guy named Irwin Schiff who was an anti-tax activist, and he was, the last years of his life, he was put in jail and handcuffed to a bed in a prison hospital for years until he died. It was like the last, he was 5 years of his life. I mean, that's horrible. It's an unthinkable torture. But, we did that to this person because he would refuse to pay his taxes.
What about though, like roads and police stations and fire trucks and all that? That all comes from taxes.
There used to be something called user fees, okay? So they would build a pier, but the people that would use the pier would pay a user fee for it, okay? So you build their private roads, and then they're paid for like that. If you use them, you pay for them. And it's hard to work that out, but basically you'd want to replace taxes with user fees, okay? And you want to learn peaceful cooperation rather than a government dictating to you how you should be behaving. For instance, and it goes everywhere. If there's no one hurt, you shouldn't be enforcing that law. Like, get rid of the drug laws. Laws against prostitution, laws against gambling, okay? Is there a victim there? Some people would argue that there is, but the government shouldn't be initiating force. Unless someone's coming to steal something from you, the government shouldn't use force. If someone's using force against you, force or fear against you to make you give up your land, your property, your asset, your intellectual property, or whatever, the government should not step in. The government should be there to defend your rights to free speech, your rights to keep what you earn, your rights to your property, the rights to what you earn, your human rights. But as far as having a system where violence is the answer, okay, we're going to take so many people who want to pay their taxes and put them in jail. They'll have a horrible life. They could be raped, they could be shot, they could be killed. Well, it's rare to get shot in jail, but you actually smuggle guns into jail. But that's torture, putting someone in jail. If they haven't really done anything wrong, you shouldn't put them in jail. Okay, they shouldn't be tortured. Being in jail is tortured. If you don't believe me, go to jail. It is torture, and you're in danger there as well. But you can't run a society based on that. You need to run a society based on mutual benefit for each other and mutual cooperation between people, as in voluntary capitalism or anarcho-capitalism, okay, which is different from what we have now. You have a lot of corporate welfare. You have a lot of government involvement in the economy. So that's what libertarianism means. If you're against the initiation of force, how do you incrementally try to eliminate as much coercion and violence from the government towards the citizenry, having them to behave in a certain way, conduct themselves in a certain way, live a certain way, let people voluntarily live how they want as long as they're not hurting anyone else. So you have a reduction of government power, complete lack of war, hopefully. And unless we're just being attacked, you should have a defense. You know, if some candidate decides to attack us, we should, defend ourselves, but they're probably not. But that's just what it means. It's a philosophical idea of being against the initiation of force. And not how do you get to a libertopia, but how do you slowly but surely eliminate the amount of coercion, the amount of people in jail, amount of laws that govern us and how they're governed. Like there was a libertarian sheriff in Colorado. He was elected. He's a libertarian, and what he did was he took all of the police officers off of the drug investigations and put them on the unsolved murders and the burglaries and patrolling and bringing crime down. So basically,
only if that was what it, yeah.
And that's
so much corruption in police force these days.
There can be, yeah. But what and usually is involved when there's drugs, when the police are busting people for using drugs. So yeah, that's definitely what causes the corruption, the money there and things like that.
Yeah.
So leave that alone. Leave drugs alone. Just give people more freedom. And for instance, he didn't have a bunch of problems. He would say, well, if someone's running a meth lab in their home, he would go shut it down. But basically, all police work was done to let's solve the murders, rape. Let's
not throw some guy in jail for weed for 25 years.
And they're winning that battle, and that's a battle libertarians have been fighting for a long time. And that's one thing.
Do you ever see there being a libertarian president?
You kind of have some that are libertarian on this and libertarian on that. And, leaning more towards libertarianism. Donald Trump ran against the war. But so did Obama, and then he ended up spending more money than Bush, unfortunately, in the war. And let's hope that he sticks to his word and he isn't wasting another $7 trillion on wars overseas. He's complained about. He used to say, why did we go into Iraq? I wish we had our $7 trillion back. We could have spent it on our roads, our bridges, our schools, our hospitals, our colleges, and he got the Republicans behind him. He said it's time to stop being the policeman of the world. And let's hope he does that. He's doing a lot of other things I don't agree with, but let's hope that he is not going to waste $7 trillion on war. And another 7, let's hope he sticks to it. But, Obama said that too and ended up wasting a bunch of money on war too, which is too bad.
Somebody just said USA destabilized countries in the last... USA destabilized 80 countries in the last 100 years through war, CIA covert actions, NP. Yeah, I would... I am not a fan of foreign policy largely in this country. It's stop trying to stick your nose. It's just like out here. When people are, if somebody's doing a drug deal in the streets, I'm not going to go in there and try to shut it down and be like, you guys are causing problems. like, and then just like punch them in the face and whatnot. For one, I'd get killed. You know. Two, it's like it's not really my place. You know, like to exercise. Yeah, like as you said, exercise force. Yeah. Now, I would not call myself a libertarian. I would call myself right now politically confused. I used to be super liberal on, because I was huge fan of like Howard Zinn and all that stuff. This was in college.
I'm a liberal. I would consider myself a liberal, but a libertarian, culturally liberal.
I just mean across the board. Now I'm like, you know, I just know so many good people who are both, and I don't think the world is that black and white to where you can just paint like a huge broad brush stroke of like this side's evil and this side's great. You know, I mean, politics is a very complicated thing, and I don't think my friend John do you know John Campanelli? He's a comic. He always says he's a comic. He's always just like, he's got a show at the Laugh Factory, but he's always like, I don't think any of us know what we're talking about. I think that's just what it boils down to. I don't think any of us know what we're talking about when it comes to like people's political ranting.
Right.
And I've brought it up a lot during this season, politics, and I don't even like to talk about them. But the reason why I brought it up is because it's in the air. It's every time I scroll through Facebook. It's every time I'm in a conversation. And there's some things, I'm not saying you should avoid politics, because especially when someone's feels like their safety or their rights or just anything like that's concerned, because that becomes a human issue rather than political. But it's like, I think some things are sensationalized by people, like in the media. I definitely do believe that the media like has brought some things to light. The one good thing that they've brought to light is a lot of these like things that police officers doing, like shooting unarmed people, specifically unarmed black guys. Like that's definitely a problem. But like the thing is then they start talking about it for 8 hours after that, and it's like, well, you knew this person, what do you think about this? And they get people mad. Like there's a difference between responsible reporting and irresponsible reporting, and I think that they're really irresponsible, you know.
Oh yeah, well there's a lot of irresponsible reporting going on there, and on all sides of the fence, and that's too bad. It's up to the consumers. And you know what the consumers have been doing with CNN and ABC and MSNBC is tuning out. Their ratings have gone down by half. I mean, just nothing. So people are turning towards the internet and alternative kind of sites and looking for news and real news, and there's a demand for it. So, you know, people are, you know, the market is spoken with a lot of those people too. You basically just have some propaganda. I remember it would just be war propaganda on television all the time. And the Democrats are supposed to be against the war. You know, liberals are supposed to be against the war, you know, and that was terrible.
They're both so corporately funded and like so obsessed with money.
I know.
Both sides.
It's very disappointing. You know, I wish I could support the Democrats. Wish I could support the Republicans, but they both do things that I don't like, and that's why I'm a libertarian. I hope to move both parties in more libertarian direction.
I used to not understand third parties. I used to joke around. I've still said this. They're like the bike cops of politicians. But like at the same token, I do think that. I definitely understand it now. I've been moving more in the third-party direction, especially this election, too, because I was just like, dude, like, neither one. Like, I didn't vote this time.
Really?
And, yeah, and
Gary Johnson.
I regretted that. But, you know, like, I knew stuff about Hillary, and then there was, like, this underlying rhetoric with Trump.
Yeah,
like,
you're two awful candidates.
You know, and it was just, like, it was so... I was really grossed out. Legitimately grossed out.
I get tired of the media just attacking Trump all day. You know, it's just constant, just one attack after another, after another, after another. I'd really like to see some more serious, and then Fox News is very positive, overly positive. I'd rather see, you know, some reporting on, you know, that's more serious. It's not just another attack on Trump. It's like, you know, I guess to a certain extent, the media is obligated to do that, to attack him. And I guess Fox News attacked Obama all day too.
They did.
And
definitely.
now the MSNBC and CNN and CBS are attacking Trump all day. And you know, there's a certain amount of, we're supposed to do that in America. There's a certain
whatever side, yeah, and that's always gone on. Even with like John Adams and stuff, there's like cartoons,
Yeah.
Like
people attack them. People attack Lincoln, and people we think of as untouchable heroes. They shot Lincoln, So people are always. Oh, I still have this. These are like, sorry, girlfriend's calling me.
Yeah,
Hello?
you want to go ahead?
No. Hello?
We can go ahead and wrap up.
I will call you back, okay?
Mark's taking a call. And proxy militias. He just said USA destabilized 80 countries in the last 100 years. Their CIA wars. And proxy militias.
Right.
That's what it was.
Still on Blackwater and all those companies are actually CIA funded and run by the CIA. When all of Blackwater and all those countries, all those companies in Iraq that were running mercenaries over there and doing industry, when they were dragged into court for human rights violations into international courts, they all said they were operating under orders from the United States government.
Yeah.
So they were all basically CIA.
It's crazy. CIA is scary, dude. And like CIA, like obviously they do certain things that need to be done, but then it's like, I mean, I've noticed anytime somebody snaps with their mental health, it's always based off of, the CIA's after me and whatnot. But sometimes I think, I'm like, what if they really were? And then that really did make them go crazy. Because anybody messing with your comfort enough is going to make your mental health go crazy. Case in point, when I had mold in my last apartment, not a big deal, right? No, I mean, it's a huge deal. What I'm saying is there are people who go through so much worse than somebody having mold in their apartment, Yeah. And I'm still feeling sick a little bit from it. But I was like, I didn't have a place to sleep at night, so I was sleeping out in my car after I'd get done streaming, and I'd feel sick from doing this. And I remember I just started to like crack at the seams like mentally because I was doing mics at night and like doing shows and then like doing this, and I just started sobbing in my car. And that's not that bad, but what I'm saying is somebody messing with my life enough could make me go crazy. Because I'm already a fragile vase,
Who knows? I read a guy was in the Green Party, and he sued the government over something. And he found out he was a vice presidential candidate of the Green Party, and he found out through discovery that while he was running for vice president under, God, what was that guy's name? I completely forget his name. Anyway, his name was Camejo, but he was the vice presidential candidate of the Green Party, and he found out through discovery in court while he was suing the government over something I completely forget, I'd have to look it up, that 2 out of every 10 people working in his campaign were CIA, FBI, and NSA agents. And that's one thing I always suspected in the Libertarian Party and being an official. And I thought that's one of the things that made me quit. I was just thinking, I can't fight this. It's just too much, and it just one of the things that made me quit. But anyway, thanks a lot,
it's
man.
creepy, dude. Where can people find you, man?
People can find me at Mark Selzer. It's SELZER is how you spell my name. On Facebook, you can find my fan page. You can also find my regular page, and there's still some room left in there to send me a friend request. As long as you're not porn spam, you can send me a friend request, and I'll probably accept it. And that is facebook.com/Mr. Mark Selzer, SELZER. Twitter
M-A-R-K, not M-A-R-C.
M-A-R-K, SELZER, and that's on Twitter and Instagram.